been absolutely absurd over Trump. Absolutely. Yes. Nazi sympathiser, KKK, dictator, Hitler, etc., etc.
But I suppose
it's a bit much, don't you think?
But is there not a free speech argument here as well? That, I mean, should we really be wanting to sort of censor political speech? It's a really interesting and controversial debate, and one we'll be having throughout the programme.
Yes, we will indeed. So get your thoughts in, gbnews.com/your say. But first, the headlines with Ray.
Thanks, guys. Good afternoon. 3 minutes past 12, our top stories. The King has written to Donald Trump following an assassination attempt in Pennsylvania on Saturday. The letter was delivered by the UK Embassy in Washington, D.C. Buckingham Palace has not disclosed details of the correspondence, but is understood to have condemned the violence, expressed condolences for the victims, and wished the former president a quick recovery. Well, Donald Trump has arrived in Milwaukee ahead of the Republican National Convention there, where he'll be formally nominated as his party's presidential candidate. The former president pumped his fist in the air as he descended the stairs from his plane. Over the next few days, he'll reveal his vice presidential running mate and on Thursday make a keynote speech. Trump says the shooting has prompted him to focus on uniting the country. Meanwhile, President Biden has appealed to Americans to lower the political temperature. Speaking from the Oval Office, he called on everyone to take a step back. Biden has faced criticism for repeatedly claiming that Trump poses a threat to democracy. Now he's saying it's time to cool it down. Back here, the Shadow Foreign Secretary Andrew Mitchell told us it's made everyone think about politicians' safety.
President Biden put it very well from the Oval Office when he talked about the coarsening of debate and the fact that we need to have a very close look at how we conduct our politics. And I hope that on the back of the elections that we've just been through here, where candidates of all parties, particularly women, suffered the most appalling acts of abuse and were often put in very frightening positions. I hope that very much that we can have a sort of national debate now about how we clean that up.
A man is appearing in court today, charged with 2 counts of murder after human remains were found in 2 suitcases in Bristol. Justin Andres Mosquera is accused of killing 62-year-old Albert Alfonso and 71-year-old Paul Longworth, who had previously been in a relationship. Police say the suspect had been staying with them at their flat in London's Shepherd's Bush, where more remains were found. The 34-year-old will appear at Wimbledon Magistrates Court. Police are scouring a farm in Hertfordshire for the remains of a woman who was murdered in 1969. Muriel McKay was kidnapped and held for ransom when she was mistaken for the then-wife of media mogul Rupert Murdoch. Brothers Arthur and Nizamuddin Hossein demanded £1 million. They were convicted of her kidnap and murder, but her body has never been found. England players have left their hotel in Berlin as they return to the UK following their 2-1 defeat to Spain in the Euros final. Many fans say they're disappointed with Gareth Southgate's management style, but he says now is not the time to decide his future. Southgate has praised his players but says Spain did deserve to win.
Our players have been incredible. They've given everybody some incredible nights. They couldn't have given any more in terms of their effort, their desire, their character. Tonight we fell short. We didn't keep the ball well enough, but the players have pushed it till the 85th minute of the final game. They've been incredible, really.
Well, a mixed reaction from England fans. These supporters in Newcastle spoke after the game.
A bit gutted, but I kind of expected it. I tried to manifest that we would win, but under the management that we're currently in, I kind of knew this was going to happen. Do you know what I mean?
The way I think about it, Southgate didn't make subs earlier, but he made the right subs this time, but it just didn't come across. I reckon he'll retire this time. Different manager, different team, will come across better.
I think you should stay. You've done really well, mate. Right? Regardless of everything, you've done fantastic. Thank you very much, pal. Keep it up. I hope you stay.
Yeah, I think we all tried to manifest the win, but it didn't work. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 7 minutes past midday, and Donald Trump has made a plea for unity after he survived an assassination attempt over the weekend, calling on Americans to not let evil win.
However, many Republicans are claiming that Joe Biden's campaign rhetoric led to the assassination attempt after the 81-year-old reportedly said it was time to put Trump in a bullseye.
Well, for his part, President Biden has condemned the attack on Donald Trump, addressing the nation from the Oval Office last night. He told Americans that politics must never become a killing field and called on the temperature in politics to be lowered.
Yes, he did. Now, let's discuss this further with GB News reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, just remind us of what's happened since this assassination attempt.
Well, both candidates have tried to strike a more presidential tone in their addresses to the nation. It's interesting, from that address from the Oval Office last night, obviously from a teleprompter, Biden calling for unity, calling for politics to not be like a battlefield or, God forbid, a killing field. But he also did stumble over a couple of lines. He referred to him as former Trump, not former President Trump. And he also said that in America, we settle our differences at the battle box, not the ballot box. He said battle box twice. And at the same time, President Trump has not used the same language that he has in the past to attack Democrats, striking, as I said before, a more presidential tone, slightly more measured. We've also seen that from Melania Trump, offering messages of love in quite an emotional and rather passionate statement issued on a headed letter. Now, there has been a move away in the national language and the conversation in the states. The Democrats have pulled any attack ads as the Republican National Convention goes ahead. And perhaps critics of Trump might say that the reason why he's speaking in a more gentle language is because he's letting his attack dogs go for the Democrats now. Now, you're talking about the violence inspired by language. That's very much a line being pushed by those close to President Trump. J.D. Vance, who is likely to be his running mate, selected soon, did say that the language used by the left had inspired directly the attempted assassination on Saturday. Trump's eldest son said that left-aligned media and Democrats had designated Trump as literally Hitler. So very strong statements from those sides. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, there has been a reduction in those attacks. And this has come actually, in many ways, it's helpful for Trump. He's likely to see a significant poll jump now, having been grazed but not dazed by that bullet on Saturday. But also for President Biden's team, in the days before this attempted assassination, they were resisting their own move to have him replaced as the Democratic nominee.
It could be quite helpful for Biden sort of rowing back, saying, but it's also more traditional. It used to be the case that there was this unspoken pact between the Democrats and the Republicans. When the Republicans had their four-year annual, not annual, but every four-year convention, the Democrats would shut up and not talk. And when the Democrats had their convention, the Republicans would shut up and not talk. That broke down in the last decade, but it could be that we're returning to that perhaps greater level of civility.
Yeah, greater level of civility, but inspired on the back of an appalling act of extreme violence that's killed at least one person and has left others in a stable but critical condition in hospital. An appalling incident occurring there on Saturday, an appalling incident that might benefit both presidential nominees, because it really did look like Biden was on the ropes from his own team last week, from those plotting to remove him. They've now been silenced as this move to reduce the coarsening of political efforts goes on. He's also been attacked, President Biden, for, as you've mentioned in your intro, reportedly saying on a phone call to donors that they needed to put Trump in the bullseye, and that's generated this wider discussion about violent language in politics.
We're just having a look at the moment at the White House. It looks beautiful, I must say. A very calm day there.
Yeah, D.C. morning. Biden returned to D.C. Because he was meant to be on holiday in Delaware, but he's obviously cut that short. He's back in the White House now.
Yeah, that's right. And as you said, Tom, that going through that process of a period of silence during an opponent's convention, an old school, an old-fashioned move. But there's no doubt they wanted to use this opportunity to put the spotlight on attacking Mr. Trump.
Now, we're talking about dialing down the rhetoric, but I must say some of the reaction on social media, I mean, extreme to the extreme. Just a little warning that this might be a little shouty. Just want to give you a little taste of some of the reaction from some on the left, I guess.
Miss those! One shot at greatness to be mentioned in the history books, and you missed the shot!
I haven't even had a second to process. You're telling me somebody finally had the balls to bring a pew-pew, and he missed! We were a second away! We were a centimeter away from half of the problem being gone, and you missed!
I'm not saying that I would ever try to assassinate a presidential candidate. All I'm saying is that if I went through all of that trouble, I wouldn't miss.
Well, sorry for those outbursts, but I think it's important to show just how this has been received. I mean, these appear to be immediate reactions to what we saw. America is hopelessly divided. I mean, is it possible? Is it possible that this could be a turning point?
Well, there have been 4 attempted or successful assassinations on sitting presidents in history. The most recent was 1981, attempted on President Ronald Reagan just in the first few months of his presidency. He enjoyed an 8-poll bounce after that in the points as he recovered from that incident after major surgery. Now, in many ways, we've been enormously lucky that this incident on Saturday could not and did not go any worse, amid significant criticism about a lax, as many critics are saying, Secret Service security operation, the perimeter not being sufficient. While many people are very concerned about the security side, there is, Emily, a lot of focus on the wider political language. Now, the frontline Democrats are certainly calling for that civility and unity. You heard it from President Biden there. Our politics can't become a battlefield. It has to remain an issue of arguments and ideas, not violence. But it's clear, isn't it, that there have been many online, away from the mainstream, who lamented the fact that that bullet missed, that it was just a graze, that it was just the ear. And it's, you know, we were millimetres from really something unspeakably atrocious.
We should say that, very sadly, one man did lose his life. Reportedly, he was shielding his family. Very distressing indeed. Thank you, Charlie Peters, as always.
Well, let's get some more now from the spokesperson for Republicans Overseas UK, Jennifer Ewing, because, Jennifer, this is all in the context of the Republican National Convention. We're expecting Trump to speak at that this week, and really it's changed the entire tone of this official nominating convention.
It has, and actually he was planning on delaying his trip to Wisconsin for a couple of days, and then he came out yesterday on Truth Social and said, no, I'm going as planned. This isn't going to get me down. So I think he's going to go in there, you know, with a great attitude. I mean, anybody who watched his reaction after being shot and almost killed in that assassination attempt, where he gets up, puts his fist in the air, looks at his supporters to let them know he's okay. It's incredible. It's brave. It's courageous. It's something you can't teach. People either have that fight or flight instinct, and he's a fighter. We've seen that, and as a matter of fact, he said, fight, fight. So I think a lot of people there were really proud of him. I think it's something we've been missing as a nation over the last few years, is strength, not only for our country, but on the world stage as well.
Jennifer, what do you make of the, sorry to interrupt, but what do you make of the claim by many Republicans and commentators and Nigel Farage here in the UK that it's this political rhetoric from the left that has got quite extreme, that may have contributed to this political violence? What do you make of that?
Sure. So, okay, let's be clear. The person responsible for the attempted assassination is the shooter, and the shooter alone. However, if people are only consuming mainstream media and they have been told since Trump descended upon those stairs in 2016 that he is a dictator, that he is a fascist, that he is like Hitler, that if he gets reelected in 2024, it could be our last election and democracy at risk. If you are constantly told that by mainstream media, by the Biden administration, by political pundits, yeah, I'm sure there are people out there that thought, oh my God, it's my duty to, protect the world from this awful man. And again, we don't know the motive of the shooter, as you said, but of course there's a link. Absolutely. And the rhetoric needs to be toned down. One thing that I have found a little problematic, shall we say, coming from Biden in particular in his speeches, is that he's not just being critical of Trump, he's critical of MAGA supporters, America first, and he goes straight after the voters, which I'm sorry is half the country, And we recall when Hillary Clinton called half the country deplorables. I think you, Tom and Emily and I, we've spoken about this in the past. Why go after the voters? If you want to go after your political opponent, fine, but don't call half the country crazy or racist or, wanting to end democracy, because they happen to prefer Trump's good policies on the economy, on the southern border, and hopefully trying to clean up this foreign policy mess the Biden administration's gotten us into.
Now, Jennifer, we're looking inside the convention centre in Milwaukee. Of course, very, very early hours of the morning still in Wisconsin. But this is going to fill up with a lot of energised Republicans over the course of the day. And do you think that this will be a more passionate convention than would otherwise be the case?
Absolutely. And look, Trump always draws big crowds. As you know, he's a former reality television star. He's an entertainer. My colleague and a friend of the show, Greg Swenson, I spoke to him earlier today and last night. He's there in Milwaukee. He said the atmosphere already starting last night was incredible. People really fired up. They're happy. They're hopeful that Trump is going to be our next president in 2024. Like you said earlier, or Charlie said, he's also going to announce his vice presidential candidate. I like that Charlie thinks it might be J.D. Vance, because that's who I'd like him to choose as well, the senator from Ohio, who became famous, as you may or may not remember, for writing a book called Hillbilly Elegy in 2015, and kind of explained a lot of the Trump phenomenon back in 2016.
Well, thank you very much indeed for your time. Jennifer Ewing, always great to speak to you, spokesperson for Republicans Overseas UK.
It'll be really interesting to see who is picked as this running mate. J.D. Vance, of course, very, very aligned with Trump, but from Ohio, is that sort of reaching out to the Rust Belt? Although Ohio's voted Republican now for the last two presidential elections.
I think what Jennifer said, though, about the perpetrator of this crime is the only one responsible for it, but the political mood, the political rhetoric can't help.
Well, much more to discuss on that, and many other stories too. Coming up, what's next for Gareth Southgate? Should he step down as England manager, and what could he have done differently? Well, who better to ask than a former England manager? Yes, that's coming up after this short break.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back. Stefan Kyriazis has, as ever, been to the theatre and saw one of the most successful performers of the modern age, one who has made his name in different genres on television and is always a magnetic presence on the stage. About whom are we talking, Stefan?
We're talking about James Corden at the Old Vic for The Constituent and its Traverse staging. So audience on either side, and it's a fantastic experience. But also it's been done this time to bring everything in a lot and make it quite intimate, because you just have one simple set. It's just a table, office space. This is a new play by Joe Penhall, and it's addressing very, very current issues of safety, especially for people in public service, doctors, nurses, teachers, and of course, as you know, politicians that are at risk and being attacked. So we have Joe Cox, Sir David Amess, and we have politicians talking about cancelling their surgeries, not wanting to appear in public, teachers being threatened. And James Corden plays an ex-serviceman who is going through a difficult divorce, dealing with a lot of PTSD, also feeling very much like fathers are overlooked, and he wants to fight for their rights. And an old school friend is a local MP, played by Anna Maxwell Martin. And he goes in to start talking to her, and it starts off quite chummy and jovial, and then it darkens and darkens. He gets quite aggressive and frustrated. She wants to help. She's an absolute idealist. This politician sense of we don't choose who we work for. You know, we are here by duty to work for everybody in our constituency. It spirals a lot. I have to say, Corden, sensational. Really? He really is a fantastic actor. Of all of them, he's so natural, and he has the most difficult role where his character is shifting all the time and becomes potentially quite threatening and dangerous, but then there's also a beautiful catharsis at the end.
The People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Sorry to say again, but it was so near yet so far. The Three Lions were, of course, defeated 2-1 by Spain in the final of Euro 2024. Yes, meaning England's 58 years of hurt will continue. I don't like reading that out.
No, it's painful.
It's painful. Yeah. It's painful.
Well, the defeat has also triggered fresh conversations about the future of manager Gareth Southgate, with many speculating that yesterday's match was the final time we will see Gareth Southgate on the England manager's bench.
Or is it? Well, who better to speak to about this than former England manager Sam Allardyce. Sam, thank you so much for coming on the show this afternoon. Really great to speak to you. So I guess the first thing, we want to focus on Gareth Southgate because I'm sick of hearing about our loss. It's just all a bit depressing. So, Gareth, do you think this will be his last international tournament managing the England team?
Personally, I think it'll be his choice. I think that the FA would like to keep him on. I think so. I think that his choice, saying it's too early to think about his future, means that he needs to get home. He needs to talk to the family. He needs to address what's happened over the last 8 years. And of course, it's been pretty good, apart from the final hurdle. Not been a better manager, I don't think, since Sir Alf Ramsey. So he's got a lot to think about on the 8 years he's had. Was it 102 games, is it? And not quite managing to get over the line to win a tournament. So it's a lot to think about. So I certainly think it'll be his choice rather than the FA's. And certainly if he does choose to step down, he can look back fondly on the career he's had.
This is the peculiar duality of the whole thing, really, that Gareth Southgate has objectively got the England team further in this particular competition than they have ever been before. 2 finals in 3 years. Really incredible stuff. But also, we haven't quite yet got over that winning line. So has he been a fantastic manager, the best manager that we've seen since the 1960s, or has he been disappointing?
Oh, no, I think that from my point of view, the only real disappointment would have been at Wembley against Italy. That team the Italian team was so poor that I think that was the big chance to win on our home soil, win the Euros, because when you look at the Italian team since that Italian team, it didn't qualify for the World Cup, and it got knocked out in the group stages on these Euros. So that was the big question mark over, did Gareth do the subs right? It's been a constant pressure on him about substitutions and changing tactics. So, but he's his own man. He knows what he wants. He knows how he's going to do it his own way. And I think in the end, it hasn't quite worked at the final hurdle. Now, what we have to face is that on this tournament, Spain were much better than we were. And I don't know, as any manager would have gone against Spain on that day and beat them. The only way you could have beat that Spanish team was by defending deep and playing the counter-attacking football only when you got the opportunity. And unfortunately, after a brief fight back, which looked very exciting for a while, they drifted away back into lethargic pressing, lethargic shutting down, which gave a lot of confidence back to the Spanish side that finally won.
Well, you've done the job before. Would you have done anything differently? You talked there about more on the defence side.
We all do it. Well, certainly we all do it our own way. I mean, you know, I probably wouldn't have picked the same squad as Gareth. Gareth probably won't pick the same squad as me. The next manager, if it's a different manager, won't pick the same squad as me or Gareth. So we pick who we think is the best players available at the moment, the best players in form, and hopefully we don't get too many injuries. I think there's a few players missed this tournament that would have benefited England had they not been injured. So, you know, that is a bit of a shame, but that happens to everybody. But it's certainly a very good squad. And there are a few young players, on a positive note, like Mainu and Gay and Palmer, that have come through and shown what they can do. I mean, there's nobody mentioning Gay. He has been probably the best defender in the whole tournament. He has never let England down at all. So, you know, it's a bright spark from a defensive point of view for England. But certainly the balance between, this time, the balance between attacking and defending. Defending very good, attacking this time a little bit lacklustre, unfortunately.
Although that being said, there were so many tantalising occasions when the ball just almost went in, when we almost got that sort of 2-1 stage back, when it was 1-1 and things were just so tense in the final 15 minutes or so of the game. If the hand of history had been ever so slightly different, if a butterfly had flapped its wings in South America and the ball spun in a slightly different way, this could have been a very different conversation today.
Well, listen, the big turning point was a double on the line clearance from Spain. Yeah, that got in and made it 2-2 and got into extra time. Who knows what would have happened, but at the end it didn't happen. It happened to us all through the tournament. We had last-ditch tackles, last-ditch headers, last-ditch goals, last-ditch corners, free kicks. We had a lot of last-ditch stuff in this tournament. Unfortunately, we couldn't find the last-ditch effort to get us through into a winning position, and even if we took it to penalties, I would have fancied us this time.
It was that number 17 on the Spanish side. Had my eye on him the whole time. If I'd been the manager, I would have said, just never let him get the ball. He was a danger from the start. He's a danger. Something Junior. What's his name? I don't know. You probably don't know. Anyway, he was the threat.
Well, Sam Allardyce, thank you so much for talking through what was a remarkable game and a remarkable season as well for the team. Thank you so much for coming on and talking us through it.
It certainly must be the most stressful job in the world. I mean, one of. I'm sure, you know, Prime Minister's quite stressful too, but...
more eyeballs on an England manager than,
that's
than
true.
a Prime Minister.
That's true, and possibly more interest. Anyway, coming up, Buckingham Palace confirms the King has written to Donald Trump after the assassination attempt over the weekend, and in the last half hour, the Prince and Princess of Wales have written a personal letter to Gareth Southgate. We'll have the latest after your headlines with Ray.
Many thanks. 12:31, our top stories. The King has written to Donald Trump following an assassination attempt in Pennsylvania on Saturday. The letter was delivered by the UK Embassy in Washington, D.C. Buckingham Palace has not disclosed details of the correspondence, but it's understood to have condemned the violence, expressed condolences for the families, and wished the former president a quick recovery. Well, Donald Trump has arrived in Milwaukee ahead of the Republican National Convention, where he'll be formally nominated as his party's presidential candidate. Over the next few days, he'll reveal his VP running mate and on Thursday make a keynote speech. Trump is saying that the shooting has prompted him to focus on uniting the country. President Biden has appealed to Americans to lower the political temperature following that assassination attempt. Speaking from the Oval Office, he called on everyone to take a step back. Biden has faced criticism for repeatedly claiming that Trump poses a threat to democracy. A man charged with 2 counts of murder after human remains were found in 2 suitcases in Bristol is due to appear in court. Justin Andres Mosquera is accused of killing 62-year-old Albert Alfonso and 71-year-old Paul Longworth. Police say the suspect had been staying with them at their flat in London's Shepherd's Bush, where more remains were found. And as we've been hearing, the Prince and Princess of Wales have praised England's grit and determination in a personal message to Gareth Southgate and his squad. The England team have now left their Berlin hotel as they return home following their 2-1 defeat to Spain in the Euros final. Many fans are saying they're disappointed with Southgate's management style, but he says now is not the time to decide his future. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A very wet day to come for much of England and Wales with weather warnings in force. Warmer further north, though, than it has been lately. That's because we're between weather systems for northern areas, but to the south, we've got low pressure approaching and these weather fronts moving into the south coast. And that's where the heaviest rain will be around lunchtime. We've got a band of pulses of heavy rain pushing in through southwest England and into Wales. They'll also arrive into the southeast later on this afternoon. Now further north, and that should stay mostly dry across Northern Ireland, much of Scotland. There's a risk of the odd shower across southeastern Scotland, but it's going to be a warmer day here. Temperatures climbing towards the low 20s, so a big difference from the weekend for northern areas. Meanwhile, across the south, it remains wet overnight tonight. Now, it should be a bright evening tonight across much of Scotland. Clear skies across western areas in particular. As I said, there is a risk of some quite heavy showers, possibly some thundery downpours across southeastern Scotland, but most areas should stay dry for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Now, this rain pushes up into northern England by the time we get into this evening, so there could be some water on the roads if you are travelling around across England and Wales through this evening. It does clear away to the north and east overnight tonight, but it will likely return through the night with further pulses of rain becoming a bit more focused across parts of Wales towards Lincolnshire as well, with the rain warning still in force through much of the night into Tuesday morning here. So there'll be a lot of cloud around overnight. Not too much of a breeze though, so under clearer skies it will be a little bit fresher, but most areas staying up in the mid-teens, so a fairly mild start. So if you do catch any sunshine first thing on Tuesday, it will feel quite warm, but for most of us it's going to be another cloudy and wet start to the day, particularly across parts of northeastern England where the rain will likely persist. Now, there's another risk of showers moving into southeastern areas of Scotland and a rain warning in force here. But again, temperatures a little bit higher and warmer tomorrow with highs of 21 degrees. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Jules Buckley. Let's go to Cheshire firstly, where the A51 between Waterworks Houses in Hurlston and Cuckoo Lane at the Burford Crossroads in Acton is blocked in queuing, a collision causing delays. There's one as well in Tamworth in Staffordshire affecting the eastbound side of the A5 Watling Street. That's blocked between Marlborough Way and Tamworth and the M42 Junction 10. A collision there causing queues as well. Now, lorry fire in Somerset causing big delays on the northbound M5, blocked from Junction 23 Bridgewater North up to Burnham on C22 queuing back on towards the A38. Anti-clock M25, In Hertfordshire, a two-lane shut before Potters Bar 24. The queue's back towards Enfield 25. There's a broken down lorry. Staying in the county, southbound A1M, a lane shut for vehicle fire. Slow away from Letchworth at junction 9.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It is now 12:36 in the afternoon, and a spot of royal news for you. The Prince and Princess of Wales have praised England's football performance in a post shared alongside a photo of their two younger children, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, who can be seen here right in front of the TV screen watching the football.
They said, "England, your teamwork, grit and determination were an inspiration to all of us, young and old. Congratulations to Spain."
I thought they'd have a larger television. Anyway, this all comes as the King and Queen Camilla are about to arrive for a two-day visit to the Channel Islands, heading to Jersey today and Guernsey tomorrow.
That television chat just reminds me of the Rishi Sunak thing in the general election campaign. You know, is having Sky something that sort of posh families do? And there's all this discourse that actually, no, the poshest families don't have a TV at all, or if they do, it's a tiny black and white one in the corner of the large drawing room.
We can tell you're the deputy political editor, can't you? Bringing everything back to the election campaign. Anyway, our royal correspondent Cameron Walker joins us now to break this all down. What a charming photo there.
Yes.
They're just like us, except royal.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's one of many televisions they have in one of many palaces. Yes, a very beautiful, unexpected photograph of Prince Louis and Princess Charlotte, who, of course, didn't get to travel to Germany like their big brother to watch the match in person with their father, Prince William, that's, of course, George. But if you look at the numbers on the back, that's their ages. So Princess Charlotte is 9 and Prince Louis is 6. The Princess of Wales took the photograph. We believe it was in Windsor, and that must be their private Adelaide cottage, we're led to believe. A really kind of lovely photograph showing that the children being very patriotic, watching the England game, but, of course, a bit of a disappointment. I'm sure the King of Spain, who was also in the crowd in Berlin, was a bit more happy at the end of the match than Prince William and Prince George were.
I thought it was an allusion to Euro 96, when, of course, England got, again, so close, but yet so far, after 30 years of hurt.
Yeah, you're going to trump me on my football knowledge here, Tom, I'm afraid. Oh, it's the ages.
That's only the first time I've ever trumped anyone on any football knowledge at all. No,
well, aren't they lucky having their personalised shirts?
But, of course, Prince George was at the match himself.
Yeah, he was. And actually, there's some really lovely photographs of Prince William and Prince George at the match in the royal box. Lots of people annoyed online that Prince George was forced to wear a suit rather than the England shirt like his two siblings there. I think you're the future king, you're in the royal box, you kind of have to wear a suit. The other royals in Spain were wearing a suit.
This debate. I mean, I quite like the Justice for Louis meme that's been going around. This is because Louis was the only one who didn't go to a sporting event in real life.
Yes.
But he's very young.
He is quite young. Well, he's 6 years old, as you saw in that shirt. I'm sure he would have been much more comfortable sat in his own lounge watching it with his mother and sister. But you're right, Prince Louis did miss out on both Wimbledon and the Euros match. But, of course, he is very young, so perhaps we're giving him an evening off for a week.
He also does tend to become the star of the show. Whenever he's put in a box, whether it's the royal balcony or anything else, he sort of fidgets and moves his hands around like he's sort of dancing and and going, ooh. And I don't know, maybe they didn't want to sort of show that.
Well, possibly. I mean, he was in the royal box for the Platinum Jubilee celebrations, where he had a little bit of a tantrum when he was 4 years old. Then, of course, he saw him trooping back in June in the Wellington office, where he was doing a little bit of a dance. Princess Charlotte telling him off, the Princess of Wales just kind of laughing it off. So I think it depends who you ask. But I'm sure when he gets a bit older, he might attend these sporting matches.
We've all had a little tantrum in the royal box, haven't we, Tom? OK, so what else is going on? This trip to the Channel Islands?
Yes, well, a busy week, really, for the King and Queen. Not only are they in the Channel Islands today and tomorrow, Jersey and Guernsey, visiting both bailiwicks, but, of course, the King's going to have to be back in London for the state opening of Parliament on Wednesday. He's still undergoing cancer treatment, and he's going to Australia, Buckingham Palace confirms today, and Samoa back in October. So a lot to unpack here, but Jersey and Guernsey, of course, huge historic links to the royal family, not part of the United Kingdom, of course, but they still have the King as head of state. It's the first visit of a reigning monarch since 2005, the first visit of Charles and Camilla since 2012, during the late Queen's Diamond Jubilee. So although the United Kingdom not getting a bank holiday because we lost the England match, Jersey and Guernsey both getting bank holidays holidays for the visits of the King and Queen. So they're separate governments, because of course they're not governed by the United Kingdom, have voted to give them a bank holiday.
We should have one too.
They're all very happy and excited from Channel Islands, but the rain is not great. But new photographs released today of the King and Queen wearing Australian insignia and New Zealand's insignia ahead of the royal visit in October, but not going to New Zealand.
Right, so that's been sort of slightly reduced, but still a pretty gruelling schedule.
Yeah, so it is because of the King's ongoing cancer treatment. So New Zealand's being skipped, and they're only going to Australia and then, of course, Samoa for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in October. I'm also told by a Buckingham Palace spokesperson that it's going to be kind of scaled back. So usually for a state visit or a royal international tour, you do, 8 engagements a day. I believe it's going to be a lot shorter than that, maybe 2 or 3, something like that.
And we're going to have to leave it there, but I do want to ask you in a little bit about this statement from the King regarding Donald Trump, the attempted assassination, and also the message to Gareth Southgate too.
Yeah,
thank you very much indeed, Cameron Walker, our royal correspondent.
The reason we had to cut that short is to head straight to Downing Street, where Christopher Hope, our political editor, is fresh for a briefing with the Prime Minister's official spokesman. Chris, what can you tell us?
Oh, hi, Tom. Hi, Emily. That's right. Well, it's the morning after the English football defeat. Keir Starmer on the way back, or he's back in the UK now. He met yesterday with Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, and Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish Prime Minister, on the margins of the football, but the main focus was the football. No word yet on a knighthood from Gareth Southgate to upgrade his OBE. Of course, he's taken us to 1 World Cup semi-final and 2 Euro semi-finals in his time as the head coach of the English team. But yeah, he's disappointed, of course, we know all that, and he wishes them all the best, a big football fan, of course. The big news for the lobby, though, I think, is the reverberations of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump on Saturday in America. As of today, the Home Office is going to contact any MPs, candidates who were threatened or suffered intimidation during the election campaign, and see how they can take it further, how they can make that better. They obviously are very concerned about the idea that the tone of language on social media, the pressure put on MPs and now MPs, but formerly candidates locally by other people, and they want to get a grip on this quickly. I think the concern might be that there could be some kind of degree of copycat behaviour, not to the extent of shooting, that kind of thing, but certainly lowering the tone in politics in this country, like President Biden wants it lowered in America.
Fascinating there that not only members of Parliament, but those who stood to be members of Parliament, people who didn't win seats, will also be contacted by the police. The government seems to be taking this incredibly seriously.
Yeah, they are. I mean, of course, we do know that Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, had a chat with former President Trump yesterday, a 5 or 10 minute conversation, very brief, when he touched down in Germany after he flew there. So we are reaching out to the team around Trump and trying to make sure that we do know how serious it was. And I think all the politics really across the Atlantic, UK and US and elsewhere, is trying to step back from some of that divisive language that we saw in this country during the election. And I think the Home Office is going to get a grip on that and look into the cases and see what more needs to be done. We're not sure the scale of that, whether it's a big team, whether it involves police, what the scale of the number of officials involved, but certainly it shows the government is getting on the front foot, I think, on political intimidation.
We're going to be talking about this a little later on in the show, but any word on David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary's trip to the Middle East?
No, not yet. No, we haven't had a readout from those meetings yet. No, we don't know that at all. We knew he was going there, of course. He's keen to be seen almost as a broker to try and work out how to bring those two sides together. Whether he can, we'll wait and see. Also, I should say, on international travel, Emily, Nick Thomas-Symonds has gone to Brussels today for talks about binding the UK and EU together again. He's the European Union negotiator. He's the person who's trying to get the UK and EU closer together. So hopefully that will lead to some further rapprochement. Notably, no mention of the word Brexit in his tweets. I wonder if Brexit is now a dirty word for this government. We'll wait and see.
Absolutely fascinating. Nick Thomas-Symonds, of course, is a very close ally of Keir Starmer. They've known each other for donkey's years. He was the Shadow Home Secretary before being sort of shuffled around, but seems to have been put in an incredibly important brief for this government and for this Prime Minister.
That's right. It is quite confusing, I think, for anyone looking into this. Stephen Doughty, Tom and Emily, is the Europe Minister. He deals with bilaterals. He works in the Foreign Office with the overall person in charge, David Lammy, who, of course, is the Foreign Secretary. But separate to that, Nick Thomas-Symonds sits in the Cabinet Office looking at relations with Europe, and that is different, and I would say is open to maybe some confusion in future years. You've got these three different roles, and why isn't Nick Thomas-Symonds based in the Foreign Office, in the Cabinet Office? That puts him closer to the Prime Minister and further away from David Lammy. No suggestion of any kind of issue here yet, but it certainly looks a bit confusing to looking into it.
Really, really interesting. Famously, that sort of network of doors in Downing Street. The closer you are to the Prime Minister, the more power you have. Potentially, that is usurping, overriding the Europe Minister, maybe. Well, Christopher Hope, thank you so much for joining us live from Downing Street.
And it's raining again in Downing Street, if you noticed.
July.
Every time.
Is it July?
Every time we go to Christopher Hope. Oh, well, at least he has a lovely GB News umbrella, which I believe can be purchased on our website.
Absolutely, gbnews.com/shop.
Anyway, coming up, free drink refills in cafes and restaurants could be banned in Wales. You can't go with your empty cup and get a refill for free, maybe. This is in a bid to encourage healthier lifestyles. Is it a glass half full for Welsh diners?
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Khloe Kardashian has come under fire after posting a picture of her 6-year-old daughter wearing a full face of makeup.
Yeah, the reality TV star said the youngster was participating in a dance recital and that wasn't an everyday occurrence.
So this morning we're asking, is it ever OK to let children wear makeup?
Well, joining us now is journalist Julie Cook. So, Julie, it's a child wearing full rouge, bright red lipstick, hair tied back, looking very, very stylised, very much, I think, like a young adult. Is this really the sort of thing we should be doing with small children?
Oh, I think it's absolutely fine. I mean, first of all, in Khloe Kardashian's case, it was a dance recital, so it was very much a kind of performance element to it. She said herself in her post, it wasn't something they do every day. She was taking part in a dance activity. So, you know, I think she's vindicated on that front. But I've let my daughter play with makeup since she was 3. When she was 3, she showed a distinct interest in my makeup palettes, going through my stuff. She's 10 now, and while I don't let her wear a full face like a drag queen, I do let her wear, you know, a bit of mascara on a weekend if she wants to. I don't see any harm in it.
Clearly, if you're a child of a Kardashian who's paid millions of dollars to endorse cosmetics, you know, that's part of the fabric of their family. My concern, though, Julie, is putting those pictures on social media where people can see them. We live in an age now where, you know, wrong-uns are scouring the internet all the time.
A lot of girls do enjoy putting makeup on. It's almost like a self-expression thing. It's like painting on a canvas. They're just trying to be a bit artistic. I don't think it's necessarily as sort of sinister as we're making out. And I think as long as you're not posting pictures everywhere or putting them at risk of harm, I don't see any danger.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm. You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 10 minutes to 1 o'clock. And free drink refills could be banned at restaurants and cafes as part of new proposals by the Welsh Government.
Health Secretary Ellen Morgan has launched a consultation to restrict promotions of food products high in fat, sugar and salt. It also proposes to restrict retailers from putting forward offers such as buy one, get one free on unhealthy food.
Goodness me, do we need this amount of state control over what we can and can't buy? Well, we're joined by the former presenter of Fat Family's Steve Miller now, because, Steve, I suppose at the heart of this proposal is a government minister trying to do some good.
So the situation it will be, if this happens, is that I can go into a restaurant, I can have as a starter some mushrooms dipped in garlic dip or whatever. Then I can have burger and chips. Then I can have spotted dick and custard. But then I can only have one fizzy drink to stop me being fat. The logic is flawed. And like many, I imagine, of GB listeners and viewers, I'm fed up of all this, ban that, ban the other. And also, you know, it's the responsible who get penalised in this, you know, because the irresponsible can't be bothered. So I say a big, fat, whopping no to these proposals. And what we do is we start thinking about the culture of our society, which frankly seems to have gone down the road of let's love ourselves fat. So on the one hand, we're saying we've got to fight obesity, but on the other hand, we're saying love your curves, right, which means fat. So we've got to change the culture. The one practical common sense thing, though, that a supermarket could do is pull forward the healthy food that is affordable, because people often think that it's going to cost a lot of money to eat well. And I get that, because it is quite hard to work out how to do it. So that's one practical thing they could do, rather than all of this, ban the other.
I mean, Steve, with the refills, would a happy compromise be maybe to have free refills for your Diet Cokes, your Fanta Zero, your whatever it is, Sprite Zero, and then for the full sugar Coke, oh no, you can only have what? No free refills. That way, people can discover the delights of diet drinks.
The answer is no. Now I'm ready for your next question.
I suppose this gets to a fundamental issue of a government trying to tell a business what to do.
Well, it is that, and frankly, I'm fed up of those people sitting in an ivory tower, especially the academics that come up with this codswallop, you know, of penalising people that are responsible, you know, for acting well. What we need to do, I know I've mentioned this before, but is to look at countries, using my common sense again, look at countries where they manage obesity well. Japan stands out. And you look at what they're doing, and then you bring that model over to the UK. But the reason that they don't, they're fricked to, is because in Japan, they say things like, it's wrong to be fat. And if you're too fat, you need to do something about it.
Yeah, absolutely right. And sushi is better than burger anyway. Thank you, Steve Miller. We're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time. That's all for this hour, but stay with us because we're going to bring you the latest development on the suitcase murder suspect case. Stay with us.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A very wet day to come for much of England and Wales with weather warnings in force. Warmer further north, though, than it has been lately. That's because we're between weather systems for northern areas, but to the south, we've got low pressure approaching and these weather fronts moving into the south coast. And that's where the heaviest rain will be around lunchtime. We've got a band of pulses of heavy rain pushing in through southwest England and into Wales. That'll also arrive into the southeast later on this afternoon. Now further north, and that should stay mostly dry across Northern Ireland, much of Scotland. There's a risk of the odd shower across southeastern Scotland, but it's going to be a warmer day here. Temperatures climbing towards the low 20s, so a big difference from the weekend for northern areas. Meanwhile, across the south, it remains wet overnight tonight. Now, it should be a bright evening tonight across much of Scotland. Clear skies across western areas in particular. As I said, there is a risk of some quite heavy showers, possibly some thundery downpours across southeastern Scotland, but most areas should stay dry for Scotland. Scotland and Northern Ireland. Now, this rain pushes up into northern England by the time we get into this evening, so there could be some water on the roads if you are travelling around across England and Wales through this evening. It does clear away to the north and east overnight tonight, but it will likely return through the night with further pulses of rain becoming a bit more focused across parts of Wales towards Lincolnshire as well, with the rain warning still in force through much of the night into Tuesday morning here. So there'll be a lot of cloud around overnight. Not too much of a breeze though, so under clearer skies it will be a little bit fresher, but most areas staying up in the mid-teens, so a fairly mild start. So if you do catch any sunshine first thing on Tuesday, it will feel quite warm, but for most of us it's going to be another cloudy and wet start to the day, particularly across parts of northeastern England where the rain will likely persist. Now, there's another risk of showers moving into southeastern areas of Scotland and a rain warning in force here, but again, temperatures a little bit higher and warmer tomorrow with highs of 21 degrees. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our summer treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest cash prize of the year so far. With an extra £30,000 in your bank account this year, you could take the ultimate financial holiday and send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could get you those nagging home improvements done, buy that brand new car, or just enable you to kick back and relax for the rest of the year. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
The Royal Academy's annual exhibition has returned for the 256th time to brighten the summer holidays. It's the world's oldest open submission exhibition. Anyone can enter work to be considered for inclusion. I'm joined now by art critic J.J. Charlesworth for his verdict. What is your verdict?
My verdict is you should go and see it. You are confronted with many things of varying quality, selected by artists, and you very much, instead of being given something to you that's supposed to be good, you have to make your own decision.
I went along yesterday, and I personally did see some pictures on the wall that I thought were absolutely stunning. I'm going to mention Peter Ucker, which I think is a remark. And now these are the two by Ben Jonson, Grundtvig 1, and we've got one coming out of Berlin Pool. I think that's an absolutely stunning piece of work. And then Claire Douglas should be up. Here we are, Claire Douglas.
Yes.
Souvenir from the Anthropocene.
Yeah.
That last one, actually, a very witty painting.
A piece like that was really interesting. I think it caught a lot of people's eyes because it had very kind of humorous, slightly bleak take on post-Brexit Britain. It's set in this fictitious world of Brummington, which is a sort of loose satire on Birmingham. I thought it was a bit mean.
I think we had maybe Black Lives Matter. We had Boris Johnson. I think our own Jacob Rees-Mogg made his way into the painting.
Yeah, so there's definitely a slant, a political slant, on the part of the artist. But even that said, I thought it was an interesting and enjoyable work, even though maybe you don't agree with the artist on what they're trying to say. And I think that actually made for an interesting moment because you're seeing that people are disagreeing, right? Both through the artwork and in front of artworks.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Monday, the 15th of July. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Now we have some breaking news on Jay Slater, the missing teenager. We're hearing reports that human remains have been found in the area where the British teen went missing in Tenerife.
Now, these are preliminary reports, and we're getting more information in all the time. But some pretty shocking news. Over a month after the British teenager went missing in Tenerife, in the northwest of the island, In the area that was originally being searched, there have now been human remains found.
Yes, a spokesman for the Civil Guard has said after 29 constant days of searching, the body of a young man has been found in the Mascot area. And it goes on. We're going to verify and bring you more details as we hear it. We don't know if the identity has yet been confirmed. But yes, the breaking news that human remains have been found in an area where the missing teenager, Jay Slater.
Now, this comes just one day after there were fresh reports of a new specialist team of volunteers searching from a non-profit based in the Netherlands. They deployed a team of 5 people and 4 dogs to the island this week. We don't know if it was that team that has found this this tragic discovery or if this was the original search team, but we are getting more information on this all the time, and we'll be getting far more into this story, verifying every fact that we can after your headlines with Ray.
Thanks, guys. Good afternoon. 1 minute past 1, our top stories this hour. And that breaking news story, Spanish rescue teams in Tenerife say they found human remains in the area where British teenager Jay Slater went missing last month. Now, Spanish police say evidence strongly suggests that those remains are those of the missing British teenager. This is, of course, a developing story, and we will bring you more on this as we get it. Right, the King has written to Donald Trump following an assassination attempt in Pennsylvania on Saturday. The letter was delivered by the British Embassy in Washington, D.C. Buckingham Palace has not disclosed details of the correspondence, but is understood to have condemned the violence, expressed condolences for the victims, and wished the former president a quick recovery. Donald Trump has arrived in Milwaukee ahead of the Republican National Convention, where he'll be formally nominated as his party's presidential candidate. The former president pumped his fist in the air as he descended the stairs from his plane. Over the next few days, he'll reveal his vice presidential running mate, and on Thursday, he'll make a keynote speech. Trump says the shooting has prompted him to focus on uniting the country. Meanwhile, President Biden has appealed to Americans to lower the political temperature. Speaking from the Oval Office, he called on everyone to take a step back. Of course, Biden has faced criticism for repeatedly claiming that Donald Trump posed a threat to democracy. Now, he says, it's time to cool it down. Here, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Andrew Mitchell, told us it's made everyone think about politicians' safety.
President Biden put it very well from the Oval Office when he talked about the coarsening of debate and the fact that we need to have a very close look at how we conduct our politics. And I hope that on the back of the elections that we've just been through here, where candidates of all parties, particularly women, suffered the most appalling acts of abuse and were often put in very frightening positions. I hope very much that we can have a sort of national debate now about how we clean that up.
A man charged with 2 counts of murder after human remains were found in 2 suitcases in Bristol is due to appear in court today. Justin Andres Mosquera is accused of killing 62-year-old Albert Alfonso and 71-year-old Paul Longworth, who had previously been in a relationship. Police say the suspect had been staying with them at their flat in London, where more remains were found. The 34-year-old will appear at Wimbledon Magistrates Court. Police are scouring a farm in Hertfordshire for the remains of a woman who was murdered in 1969. Muriel McKay was kidnapped and held for ransom when she was mistaken for the then wife of media mogul Rupert Murdoch. Brothers Arthur and Nizamuddin Hossein demanded £1 million at the time. They were convicted of her kidnap and murder, but her body has never been found. The Prince and Princess of Wales have praised England's grit and determination in a personal message to Gareth Southgate and his squad. The England team have left their Berlin hotel as they return home now following their 2-1 defeat to Spain in the Euros final. Many fans say they're disappointed with Southgate's management, but he says now is not the time to decide his future. Southgate says Spain deserved the win.
Our players have been incredible. They've given everybody some
incredible nights. They couldn't have given any more in terms of their effort, their desire, their character. Tonight we fell short. We didn't keep the ball well enough, but the players have pushed it till the 85th minute of the final game. They've been incredible, really.
Well, a mixed reaction from England fans. These supporters in Newcastle spoke after the game.
A bit good, but I kind of expected it. Like, I tried to manifest that we would win, but under the management that we're currently in, I kind of knew this was going to happen. Do you know what I mean?
The way I think about it, Southgate didn't make subs earlier, but he made the right subs this time, but it just didn't come across. I reckon he'll retire this time. Different manager, different team, will come across better.
I think you should stay. You've done really well, mate. Right? Regardless of everything, you've done fantastic. Thank you very much, pal. Keep it up. I hope you stay.
OK, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 7 minutes past 1 o'clock. And now for that breaking news that Spanish police have found human remains in the area where British teenager Jay Slater went missing.
Well, we're now joined by our reporter Charlie Peters to tell us more. Charlie, what do we know?
Well, the civil guard, the gendarmerie of Tenerife, that's been taking the lead in this investigation since it started 4 weeks ago today, have said now in a statement delivered via Reuters that they have found a lifeless body of a young man in the Masca area. Now, Masca is the village where Jay Slater is reported to have travelled to on June the 16th, the Sunday evening before he went missing after that NRG festival in the south of the island. They said that all indications indicate that it could be the young British man who went missing for 29 days. So no official confirmation on the identity of this body that they have found in the northwest area of Tenerife, in the Rural de Teno National Park, where, of course, the significant search operation was launched almost 4 weeks ago, because the day after the missing persons report was made, we did see those search and rescue teams deployed. Now, that original search and rescue operation lasted for 2 weeks. Now, on Saturday, the 29th of June, they had that significant final push operation, as it was termed, that call for volunteers. But since then, there has been no official searching. The investigation continued, but they canned their main specialist mountaineering operation effort in the northwest of the island. They said that they were keeping their eyes and ears open to other leads involved. So this is the first significant update since that period 2 weeks ago when they pulled off the official search.
Charlie, when this story first broke, it was shocking, and we covered it day after day after day. There were teams out scouring that very rocky, mountainous landscape. And then the teams seemed to suggest that they lowered the intensity of the search in the countryside and perhaps suggested, at least, they were looking at other leads in the towns, in the urban conurbations of the island. But perhaps they were on the right track in the first place.
Yeah, and the suggestion that was being made at the time as to why they had pulled off that search is because they had done everything possible in the area. Now, unlike what you might have found during British search and rescue operations for missing persons, the civil guard in Tenerife were very limited in their press updates. They never held a press conference. Information we got was through snippets gathered by journalists on the ground and also just purely from watching them in their actions.
Now, Charlie, we're just hearing reports that the Spanish police are saying that Jay Slater could have suffered an accident or a fall. Now, at this stage, we don't know 100% whether these human remains belong to Jay Slater, the missing teenager. The police saying all indications point to the fact that it is, but we await that confirmation. Presumably, they'll have to do a DNA test.
Yeah, that'll be the next stage to determine the identity of the remains they found. And referring to that fall or the potential of an accident taking place leading to the recovery of these remains, in the statement they do refer to an inaccessible area. And Tom, that points back to the terrain that you raised. So many of the operations that we saw at the start of the search were with drones, not with people, because a lot of the terrain they were seeking to cover, the ground they wanted to investigate, was inaccessible by foot. And it is a rocky area. It's not like some of the search operations we saw 2 months ago in Simi, on that Greek island near the coast of Turkey, which was, more undulating. This is significantly more treacherous terrain. And going off the path, as he reportedly did, Jay Slater, according to friends who took phone calls from him, as indeed the location on his phone seemed to indicate, did bring a significant degree of danger. So we did see those specialist teams brought in, not only from the island, but also from Madrid. They got reinforced in the second week of the search from specialist groups, drones, helicopters and sniffer dogs. And we also saw them moving into the valley in that second week of the search, into potential caves and any other area where those remains could have been located today.
Well, we're looking at some of the terrain on our screens now of the search as it was a couple of weeks ago. We can see the fairly arid nature of the land. There have been rocks and caves and steep angles and sharp drops as well. So the case of, if this was indeed a teenager trying to get home from a party, walked the wrong way, went off the road, slipped and fell or tipped off the edge of a steep ledge, that would seem to make a lot of sense.
It would. We'll wait, of course, for the DNA confirmation and further information from the Civil Guard, but all the indications from the original reports from Jay's friends, we heard regularly from a young woman called Lucy about the penultimate phone call he made at the time. Another friend came forward saying that he heard him slipping on rocks. That also supports this theory that he'd gone off the main path there. But it was an 11-hour walk that he was attempting to make, reportedly, according to reports of those original phone calls, from the northwest back to the south, where his accommodation was. 1% battery on his phone. There was also reports of a cut on his leg from the local, was it a cactus that he had come into contact with. So a really treacherous situation that he was in at the time.
Now, this development, it was only a few hours ago, actually, that his mother gave a statement addressing some of the, I guess, the nastier conspiracy theories.
She said they were vile conspiracy theories.
Yeah, to then have her make that statement and then for this news to come out.
Yeah, it must be an appalling time for the family who've remained on the island, supported by online funded efforts to maintain their accommodation and also just food. I mean, the cost of living on a holiday island in the peak of summer is not easy. And also they had supported a new search team, a Dutch organisation. They reportedly already had 4 or 5 people deployed on the ground with their sniffer dogs, decades of experience from this not-for-profit specialist search group. Another person was due out to fly today, but obviously don't know if they are involved in this new update from the Civil Guard, who had reportedly called off their on-the-ground search effort after that major 2-week push. So Debbie Duncan, Jay's mother, saying yesterday that vile conspiracy theories were impossible to avoid because they had just covered so much of the social media sleuthing and indeed much of the journalistic coverage of the search and rescue operation, because after they called off that search, the Civil Guard, but said they were open to alternative leads, that did then bring in amateur sleuths and investigators who'd flown out not only to support the family, but also on their own back to put forward their own theories and their own speculation. But at this time, the latest information we have is that remains have been found, potentially, of the young British man, Jay Slater, who went missing 4 weeks ago today.
And that speaks to just how unhelpful, really, the amateur sleuthing has been over the course of the last 29 days. It will have been deeply distressing for the family, but also it will have been off-putting for those who are paid to do a professional job.
Yeah, and they've had no shortage of resources put into this search, the Civil Guard. There was a lot of criticism by those close to Jay, actually, of the police, saying they failed to communicate effectively and that the search teams were insufficient. But I think when you look just bluntly the pure resources they put into the northwest of the island. We've mentioned the helicopters and the drones and the sniffer dogs and all the rest of it. It was clear that they were putting on a significant shift here in very treacherous terrain, moving into the valleys, into the mountainous areas. And now we don't know who found these remains, but it has been reported through the newswires that the Civil Guard has recovered a lifeless body, lifeless remains that could be Jay Slater's.
Why did they call off the search, or at least, you know, why did that happen?
Well, after 2 weeks of searching in the same area, the only possible sort of location when they thought his body could be, and I think it's worth noting, referring back to this statement, that they've recovered these remains in the Masca area, which is the village he was staying at in that Airbnb. They clearly didn't think that he could have travelled significantly beyond the perimeter of their search. Now, just based purely on the information they've given us from this statement this afternoon, that perspective, that theory does seem to be supported by this latest update, because they have found these remains in that area. Again, we don't know that it's him, but they have pointed to the fact that it's likely that these remains belong to Jay Slater, the teenager from the northwest. But why did they call off the search? They just don't think they could have done any more at the time working in the area that they were looking through.
Now, of course, we can't confirm this at this stage, but we are hearing that the Spanish police say all indications are that this body is Jay Slater.
Yeah, and that will point to the timing. It's appalling to reflect on this, but it'll also point to the state that the body is in after so much time being subject to the elements. That will factor into the statement and the understanding that the Civil Guard have, and also the intelligence they have about the area. Who else could have gone missing and been found in such a way? There have been many cases of bodies going missing, people getting lost in Tenerife in recent decades, but after 4 weeks there is an expectation of what those remains might look like, and we have to infer from this statement that those 4-week effects mirror what the Civil Guard have found in the last day or so.
Absolutely. And Charlie, just remind us of the timeline of events. Jay Slater, the missing teenager, he was on his first holiday abroad without his parents. Then what happened?
Well, his first holiday without his family, really, with friends, attending this music festival in the south of Tenerife. Now, that was on June the 16th, the Sunday when he attended the Energy Festival. Now, in statements released by the police since then, they've confirmed that he left that festival in the early hours with 2 British men for an after-party in the north of the island, some 30 miles north, in the Rural de Teno National Park in the northwest area, focusing on an Airbnb rental property in the Masca village of the island. Those men then flew back to Britain in the days after June the 17th. But Jay Slater was not seen again after leaving that property. He left in the early hours, not in the early hours, apologies, later on that morning, after sunrise, phoned his friend Lucy at around 8:50, and the last ping of the location on his phone came soon after. He said on the phone, reportedly he had 1% battery on his phone. He had cut his leg on a cactus. Now, another phone call later, a friend came forward a couple of days later, a friend also on this holiday trip, said that he'd heard Jay sliding down some rubble and some rocks in the northwest of the island. And that missing persons report was made on the same day. On Tuesday, the 18th of June, a significant search and rescue operation was launched by the Civil Guard. We don't really have an equivalent of the Civil Guard in Britain. They're like the Carabinieri in Italy. They're like a military police, so they have a different role, different structure, and a different kind of approach to dealing with these operations. They do have specialist mountain rescue teams, which of course you need in Tenerife in such a terrain, and they did bring in support from Madrid. That went into a 2-week intensive ground operation involving all of the assets and resources we've mentioned, and that culminated on the Saturday of the second week of the operation with what they described at the time as a massive search and rescue effort supported by volunteers. Now, volunteers criticised that operation on the day that it took place when it was finished because insufficient numbers turned up. Now, the Civil Guard at the time did call for those who could handle the terrain to come along. They didn't want just hill walkers to turn up and holiday makers to have a go at finding someone in such treacherous circumstances. They wanted those who could do it, who had experience in the area. Only a handful met that criteria to support the already quite significant Civil Guard teams After that search and rescue was concluded, and it failed, they didn't find remains or his body on that day. They then said, in a very abrupt statement, that the search operation was called off, but they were investigating other leads. Now, a third-party investigator on the island at the time pointed to a criminal underworld on the island. That was particularly interesting. Others said that they really were desperate to speak to those two men we just mentioned, who Jay Slater was with on the night of the 16th before he went missing on that walk back, that 11-hour walk he would have needed after missing the bus from the northwest to the south of the island. And other leads were also pointed to in newspaper reports about what could have happened at the festival on the Sunday night. But none of these leads were conclusive enough for the police to make any statement, and there was no clear investigation on them. Also, in the second week before the search rescue was called off, we also had reports of a potential sighting of Jay Slater watching the Euros at a village nearby. That was not pursued very significantly in any public statement again, but we do know that CCTV was passed over to the Civil Guard. We have to presume that it was just called off as a possible lead very shortly. But in the 2 weeks since the official search was called off, it has to be said that it's gone pretty quiet on Tenerife. Now, the family have continued to call for support. We did have this specialist Dutch team flying out mostly recently in the last few days. Further assets flew in from the Netherlands yesterday. Another person was due to join today. But that was the only really significant search operation update we had from people involved with this situation, again supported by public donations coming from England and across the UK to support Debbie Duncan, the mother of Jay Slater, as they stayed on the island. But this significant update today does suggest, all indications suggest, that Jay Slater's remains have been found on the island.
And those are the words that we've got from the Spanish authorities, that all indications are that this is Jay Slater, this lifeless body that has been found in the area of interest. It's interesting that you note the rather opaque way that the Spanish authorities have been operating over the last 29 days. Only statements, no press conferences, no family liaison for the family of Jay Slater. It's been the British Embassy that has been doing all of the liaison. Of course, in this country, you'd expect police liaison officers. You'd expect press conferences. You'd expect a much more open way of investigating this. And potentially the closed way that this has been investigated has led to this sort of online web of conspiracy, all of these theories and amateur detectives making life really quite difficult for the mother, Debbie Duncan.
Well, increasingly in a social media age, people like to speculate on these sorts of cases regardless of what the police are saying. There's no shortage of major search and rescue operations where the police are engaging regularly, often with daily press conferences, and people still do fire in their own theories and fly over to get involved in their own unique ways. But I think also the criticism was so strong from the family and also many commentators and indeed former detectives who've worked in this area before, that we even saw Lancashire police offering their own support to the Civil Guard. They offered to fly out officers, and that was swiftly rebuffed by the specialist group. And I'm regularly using that term specialist group for a reason. They are the specialists on the ground. It's a mountain rescue and intervention group that's made this statement today. They are the resourced experts. They knew what was going on, and they made that search and rescue operation.
Well, thank you very much. Charlie, please stay with us. We're going to have more on this breaking news that human remains have been found in Tenerife. All indications, according to the Spanish authorities, that this is the missing teenager, Jay Slater. Devastating news for the family. We'll have more on that after this short break.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle has reportedly finished filming her new show for Netflix. It aims to celebrate the joys of cooking, gardening, entertaining and friendship.
Yeah, this comes after Prince Harry's Netflix documentary, The Heart of Invictus, failed to hit the right note with viewers missing out on the top 10 in the streaming charts.
So, will this next venture be a success? Well, joining us now is royal commentator Kinsey Schofield.
I know I've talked to the both of you about Meghan Markle potentially running for president, so this feels like a bit of a dud to go from Meghan Markle running for president to Meghan Markle's Netflix series about friendship and cooking. So she's wrapped this recent show. They rented a home near hers in Montecito so that as their cooking set. And they're saying that this is really make or break for Harry and Meghan when it comes to their Netflix contract.
Do you think, Kinsey, it's fair to say that Meghan Markle has proved to be commercially a bit of a damp squib? Even in America, her native homeland, she's kind of Oprah without the audience when it comes to the cooking. Also, is she kind of, do you think... They saw her as the golden ticket, didn't they, to unlimited revenue, unlimited audiences, and it just hasn't happened.
Look, I think Meghan is a beautiful woman, and I do think she's talented, but I think how you treat people is incredibly important. And not only was she rumored to have been cruel inside Kensington Palace with several bullying allegations, but here in the States, Archwell Productions, their audio section, their scripted section, they've gone through several employees. And I think it's a reflection on the way that people are treated there. And I think as a viewer, you might get that. You might feel that way, and maybe that is where the appeal has been lost.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 27 minutes past 1. Now we're getting straight to that breaking news. Spanish police have found human remains in the area where British teenager Jay Slater went missing.
Yes, reports suggest Spanish police have said all indications are that the body is of Jay Slater. We're joined now by our reporter Charlie Peters to tell us more. Charlie, what are we hearing from the Spanish authorities?
Well, the civil guards say they have found lifeless remains in the Masca area, which is the village where Jay Slater stayed in on the night of the 16th of June, that Sunday after attending that festival. They've also said they found these remains where all indications suggest that they are the body of Jay Slater in an inaccessible area in Masca. Now, this does point to the terrain and the ground there, very significantly difficult area for the specialist search and rescue teams to work in. It does also suggest why it's taken 4 weeks to find some remains. And they've also pointed to the potential of an accident taking place leading to these remains ending up in an inaccessible area in the northwest of the island.
Now, we're looking at some of this terrain on our screens now, and you can just see how sort of dense and thick it is, how there are sharp drops and steep cliffs. I mean, it really is a nightmare to search, much of it very, very arid. It's been 29 days of this search before this apparent conclusion that may well have come to place today. It's easy to see why the teams have spent quite so long with, until today, very little sort of discovery.
Sure, and they had a wide perimeter to work through. It was clear from observing how the Civil Guard were working in the area, their convoys of resources regularly moving throughout that rural area and in the mountainous regions in the northwest of the island, slipping between small outbuildings that they regularly searched and researched, and then also into valleys and mountainous areas. There was no one concentrated area, and it was clear on several occasions that these specialist groups from the Civil Guard, the Mountain Intervention and Rescue Group, were researching several locations. That's what went on for 2 weeks. They only called off the search after a final massive operation, in their words, calling on volunteers with sufficient capabilities to engage with the Civil Guard and augment their search in that northwesterly area of the island, that they had to finally say, we can't look anymore in this style. We're keeping the investigation open. Other leads will be pursued, but the on-the-ground search has concluded. That was 2 weeks ago, and now all indications from the lifeless remains that they have found point towards the recovery, potentially, of the body of Jay Slater.
And the suggestion that this could have been an accident, a fall in this rough terrain. Hearing from the Civil Guard command over there that they're awaiting the results of an autopsy to confirm that that's what happened. But that's what we're hearing at the moment.
Yes, and only in the second week of this search did they call for an upgrade in the resources they were using, with specialists coming in from mainland Spain, from Madrid, to augment the search teams on the island, pointing to the struggle they faced in locating any lead that pointed towards the mystery of where Jay Slater had gone that evening. Now, an autopsy taking place now will point towards more of an understanding of what took place in those key hours after that final phone call just before 9 a.m. on Monday, the 17th of June, when Jay went missing and was last heard from. The only leads they had to go on after that were one other phone call made to a friend where he said that he was heard slipping down rocks and had gone off the main path. But also there was that location ping on his phone showing him slightly away from the route that a mapping app would have showed you to take if you were to walk the 11 hours from the Masca area in the Rural de Teno National Park back to the south of Tenerife, where his accommodation was. So very limited information for the specialist groups to go off, and now an autopsy might give more information.
And presumably very difficult to have an autopsy if this body perished so long ago now. It would be very difficult to find exactly what happened, I assume.
Yeah, and it is grim to reflect on this, of course, but after 4 weeks in the elements, approaching the height of the Spanish summer in Tenerife, you do get the sense that one of the reasons why these remains will be difficult to assess is the effect that natural degradation will take place during that time, adding an additional strain for these teams to work through.
Well, Charlie, thank you very much. Do stay with us, of course. We'll have much more on this story and indeed head live to Tenerife. That's after your headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, guys. 33 minutes past 1, our top stories. As we've been hearing, human remains, believed to be those of missing British teenager Jay Slater, have been found in Tenerife. Spanish rescue teams made the discovery in the area where the 19-year-old went missing last month. His phone was last traced to the Masca ravine in a remote national park. In a statement, the Civil Guard said he may have died due to an accidental fall. However, a post-mortem will be carried out to verify the cause of death. The King has written to Donald Trump following the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania on Saturday. Buckingham Palace has not disclosed details of the correspondence, but it's understood to have condemned the violence, expressed condolences for the victims, and wished the former president a quick recovery. Donald Trump has arrived in Milwaukee ahead of the Republican National Convention, where he will be formally nominated as his party's presidential candidate. Over the next few days, he'll reveal his vice presidential running mate and make a keynote speech. Trump says the shooting has prompted him to focus on uniting the country. President Biden has appealed to Americans to lower the political temperature following the assassination attempt. Speaking from the Oval Office, he called on everyone to take a step back. Biden has faced criticism for repeatedly claiming that Trump poses a threat to democracy. A man charged with 2 counts of murder after human remains were found in 2 suitcases in Bristol is appearing in court. Justin Andres Mosquera is accused of killing 62-year-old Albert Alfonso and 71-year-old Paul Longworth. Police say the suspect had been staying with them at their flat in London's Shepherd's Bush, where more remains were found. The Prince and Princess of Wales have praised England's grit and determination in a personal message to Gareth Southgate and his squad. The England team have left their Berlin hotel now as they return home, following that 2-1 defeat to Spain in the Euros final. Many fans say they're disappointed with Southgate's management style, but he's saying that now is not the time to decide his future. Right, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Stay tuned if you've got money on your mind. The pound will buy you $1.2969 and €1.1895. Price of gold, £1,863.87 per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,219 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A very wet day to come for much of England and Wales with weather warnings in force. Warmer further north, though, than it has been lately. That's because we're between weather systems for northern areas, but to the south, we've got low pressure approaching and these weather fronts moving into the south coast. And that's where the heaviest rain will be around lunchtime. We've got a band of pulses of heavy rain pushing in through southwest England and into Wales. That'll also arrive into the southeast later on this afternoon. Now further north, and that should stay mostly dry across Northern Ireland, much of Scotland. There's a risk of the odd shower across southeastern Scotland, but it's going to be a warmer day here. Temperatures climbing towards the low 20s, so a big difference from the weekend for northern areas. Meanwhile, across the south, it remains wet overnight tonight. Now, it should be a bright evening tonight across much of Scotland. Clear skies across western areas in particular. As I said, there is a risk of some quite heavy showers, possibly some thundery downpours across southeastern Scotland, but most areas should stay dry for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Now, this rain pushes up into northern England by the time we get into this evening, so there could be some water on the roads if you are travelling around across England and Wales through this evening. It does clear away to the north and east overnight tonight, but it will likely return through the night with further pulses of rain becoming a bit more focused across parts of Wales towards Lincolnshire as well, with a rain warning still in force through much of the night into Tuesday morning here. So there'll be a lot of cloud around overnight. Not too much of a breeze though, so under clearer skies it will be a little bit fresher, but most areas staying up in the mid-teens, so a fairly mild start. So if you do catch any sunshine first thing on Tuesday, it will feel quite warm, but for most of us it's going to be another cloudy and wet start to the day, particularly across parts of northeastern England where the rain will likely persist. Now, there's another risk of showers moving into southeastern areas of Scotland and a rain warning in force here, but again, temperatures a little bit higher and warmer tomorrow with highs of 21 degrees. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon to you, I'm Jules Buckley. The northbound M57 Prescott Junction 2 up towards the East Lancs Road, that's Junction 4 for Knowsley. A vehicle undergoing a tyre change, a lane closure in place. A lane shut 2 in Leicestershire on the northbound M1, Leicester 21 up towards Ashby de la Zouch. At Junction 22 there's a breakdown there. Big queues northbound for the M5 in Somerset, still a lane closure in place. Junction 23 to 22, that's Bridgewater North up to Burnham on Sea, queuing back before Junction 24 now, an early lorry fire getting recovered. And then on to the anti-clock M25, long queues before Potters Bar 24 follows an earlier broken down lorry, heavy back to Waltham Abbey 26, and at Chertsey 411 anti-clockwise, the outside lane's closed on the exit slip there, there's a breakdown.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 39 minutes past 1. Now, we are continuing our coverage of the discovery of human remains in Tenerife. The authorities locally say that all indications are that these are the remains of Jay Slater.
Yes, and we're hearing a new breaking line that the body was found with Jay Slater's possessions and clothes. These are reports at this stage. But joining us now from Tenerife is travel writer and owner of MyGuideTenerife.com, Joe Joe Corley. Joe, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Tenerife. This story has gripped the nation. I'm sure it has the same in Tenerife. This will be a devastating update for the family of missing teenager Jay Slater.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're holding out hope that he would be found alive, but after so long, it's it was a hope that was probably not going to happen. All our hearts go out to the family. It's a very tragic end to this story.
Now, of course, we've been covering this story on and off for the last 29 days. It's been a huge search effort, of course. What can you tell us about the terrain that has been being searched, this part of Tenerife that eluded professional search teams for so long?
Well, apparently the body was found reasonably close to Masca village. It wasn't too far out, but it was in an area of the ravine that was very, very inaccessible. And there are many areas like this where it takes experienced mountaineers to access these areas. It's very easy to miss something in that kind of area. It's very steep, very volcanic. It's very, very dangerous terrain.
And it was only hours ago that the mother of Jay Slater released a statement talking about all the horrible conspiracies that had been online, all the nastiness that she'd seen, how it may have been affecting the search and rescue mission, and then only hours later to get this news.
Yeah, I mean, it's horrific. The family have been plagued by these conspiracy theories and online trolling, whatever you want to call it, all through the case ever since they arrived on the island, which is horrific. But now to get the news that this does seem indeed like a tragic accident, he's fallen, it just adds to the heartbreak. It's been so difficult for them. I think part of the problem was this lack of information that was being put out to the public, and it was being filled by these conspiracies. But nonetheless, there was some horrific things said. I hope that the family can in the future find some peace with this now.
Now, we're getting new information in all the time and verifying as much as we can. It does seem that the body was found with the clothes and possessions of Jay Slater. The police saying all indications that this is Jay Slater. And Joe, you were saying that this was actually not all that far from where he was last known to have been.
Yeah, we don't know exactly. They've not released the exact location yet. But looking at satellite maps and images, it looks like I don't know how far away it was, but it looks like it was not, say, at the end of the ravine towards the ocean. It was closer to the actual village of Masca, which suggests that the accident possibly took place very soon after he went missing. He didn't seem to have travelled that far, and whether he stumbled or not, we're not sure.
And Joe, how big a story has this been in Tenerife? Has it gripped the public there as it has here, or has it been more focused the expat community?
No, well, it's been a huge story within the expat community for sure. It has been the subject that people are talking about whenever they're together. The mysteries and obviously the sympathy and the loss of Jay. Within the Spanish community, maybe not quite as much, but it's certainly been, big news amongst the British community, and this will come to a massive shock.
Now, of course, you run the myguidetenerife.com website. Have you noticed that this has been affecting people with regard to their plans to travel to Tenerife? Is this affecting the tourism industry on the island?
I think a little bit, yeah. There have been comments, there have been messages suggesting or asking if it's safe to come to Tenerife. People have been taking this as something that regularly occurs in Tenerife, which it obviously doesn't. And people have been concerned, but it's a tragic one-off. I think this has led to some people querying whether it's the right decision, and obviously it's a decision that individuals have to make themselves.
Yes, when anything terrible ever happens in a location, it does impact people's plans. They have concerns, of course. Joe, in terms of your experience with the Spanish authorities, there have been some criticism along the way of how the search and rescue mission has gone and whether the right decisions were made at what time, etc. What's your experience of that? If you have any.
There have been criticisms, yeah. Like I said, there was a lot of, there's a big void of information that's been put out because the Guardia Civil do not work like that. They do not make public briefings daily. So there's a lot of speculation. You know, there was a few golden nuggets within this kind of TikTok detective work. I don't know if that actually led to the finding. I don't know if there's anything in that actually helped. But in general, it was a problem. It was as the Guardia Civil put it, it was a big noise that they could have done without, to be honest.
Yes, it is interesting the differences there between the Civil Guard and the police as we know it in the United Kingdom. How have the Civil Guard been responding to some of that criticism, to the constant questions, I suppose? Because, as you say, it's been a huge amount of a huge topic of conversation on the island, and some criticism in there for the authorities.
Yeah, there has been criticism about particularly the lack of information provided. And obviously from the family's point of view, they've been very praiseworthy of the police, but obviously, you know, nothing is going to be ever enough until Jay was found, which he seems to be tragically now has. The other thing is, yeah, maybe, I don't know, they will listen to the fact that this lack of information has provided such a void and fueled so much speculation. Maybe they will listen, but the Guardia Civil are the Guardia Civil, and they've carried out their operations the same ever since they were founded.
OK, well, thank you very much indeed for your time. Joe Cawley, travel writer and owner of myguidetenerife.com. Really great to speak to you this afternoon. Thank you.
Well, now, more on that breaking news. Of course, Spanish police have found human remains in the area where British teenager Jay Slater went missing. These reports suggest that Spanish police have said all indications are that the body is of Jay Slater. Charlie Peters, our reporter, is on this story. And not just these indications of who this body is, but also indications that he may have had a fall.
Yes, so reporters in Spain, in the mainland in Madrid, are saying that the police are suggesting that the remains that they have found belong to someone who could have made a drop down a chasm or a drop in the land in the area near to where these remains were recovered. Again, going back to the rugged and mountainous terrain we were talking about, and the fact that when they launched that massive search operation at the end of the second week of their search, they called on experienced people who were used to dealing with this area. And the group of the Civil Guard that has recovered these remains, with all indicators pointing towards them being the remains of missing teenager Jay Slater, that group is from the Mountainous Intervention and Recovery Group, so another specialist subset within already a very unique force in the Spanish authorities. So again, pointing towards the risk from the area and also suggesting why, after 2 weeks of intensive on-the-ground operations, they could not recover Jay Slater. We've also heard in the last few moments from a group called the LBT Group, which is a charity that has supported Debbie Duncan, Jay's mother, and the family in Tenerife as they continue their own self-funded operations to support the recovery and the search for Jay Slater. This is a group that works with the families of missing persons and those who've been involved in the miscarriages of justice as well. They said that, and this has not been confirmed by the Spanish police, but they said that Jay's possessions and clothing were recovered in this search. Now, we've heard from following reports since he went missing on the 17th of June that Jay's passport were in his hotel room down in the south of the island, as with the rest of his clothes and money, etc. But one of the reasons why we know he had some possessions on him is that the night before he was at a festival, and on the morning he took a photo for Snapchat on his personal mobile phone, which was then uploaded and shown to be in that location where these remains have been found.
Now, we do have a statement from LBT Global. As you say, they've been working with the family, and that statement, let's read it out now. A body found in Tenerife, thought to be Jay Slater, is understood to have been found close to his mobile phone's last location and with his possessions and clothes. That's from missing persons charity LBT Global on behalf of the family. A short statement, but repeating and really reaffirming those facts that have been reported again and again now.
Interesting that information doesn't come out from the Spanish police, but it is a trustworthy source close to the family that has been involved in this search. Now, the Spanish authorities, the language they use about the location where they have recovered these remains, not only do they describe it as inaccessible, but also steep. And I think that points to the specific areas that we did see them working in. Now, as your guest and many other commentators have said on this issue, the Civil Guard don't give regular updates. They've not provided information through press conferences or statements as they continued this investigation. But we can assess and understand their work just through observing them, because there were so many resources in that area, in particular in these steep and inaccessible parts of the Rural de Teno National Park, researching again many specific locations that were considered particularly treacherous and difficult to navigate through. Ravines were core parts of that search, and the valleys that they moved into, really in the second week, we saw them moving away from those small outbuildings near the Masca village, and we could observe them moving into caves and more treacherous, rugged, mountainous locations where, with a misstep, the tragedy could have occurred, where people could very easily lose their footing and fall. And also it's worth noting, I think, in relation to the ground and the terrain they're working on, we do have reports claimed by a friend who is potentially the last person that Jay could have spoken to, saying that on the phone he heard Jay slipping on rocks as he'd moved away from the main path where he had started that reportedly 11-hour walk from the location he was in, Masca, in the northwest of the island, to the south where his accommodation was.
Yes, and we understand there is an autopsy ongoing to try and find out what exactly happened and to 100% confirm the identity of the body. This is the worst possible scenario for his family and friends.
It's confirming the nightmares that they will have been having about this situation. And in the second week of this search, when it looked more doomed, as we were observing the efforts being made by the Civil Guard, some of the language being used about that operation switched from rescue to recovery. And that does appear what's happened today. Now, the family obviously kept their hope, as you have to in this scenario. You have to believe until everything's confirmed that your loved one may be recovered safely. But the authorities today making that claim that all indications suggest that this is the body of Jay Slater, the missing British teenager, missing since the 16th of June on that evening when he went up to the northwest of the island.
In a hellish 29 days for the family, it's been a mystery for the country. It looks like today it may well have come to a conclusion. As you say, Charlie, all indications are that these remains found, this body found, is that of Jay Slater, found reportedly with his possessions, with his clothes, and indeed reportedly possible that Jay Slater had a fall. Of course, we have heard, just to recap, that this body has been found in Tenerife, thought to be Jay Slater, understood to have been found close to his mobile phone's last location, very close to the last location that he was known to have been at, with his possessions and clothes. That's from the missing persons charity LBT Global, who've been working with the family and speaking on behalf of the family.
Yes, and we're going to continue to bring you any updates when and if we hear them. Thank you very much indeed, Charlie Peters, for bringing us that live coverage here on GB News. Devastating news for the family of a missing teenager, Jay Slater. But yes, just to reiterate, human remains found in Tenerife, close to where Jay Slater went missing. We'll bring you more and stay with us.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A very wet day to come for much of England and Wales with weather warnings in force. Warmer further north, though, than it has been lately. That's because we're between weather systems for northern areas, but to the south, we've got low pressure approaching and these weather fronts moving into the south coast. And that's where the heaviest rain will be around lunchtime. We've got a band of pulses of heavy rain pushing in through southwest England and into Wales. That'll also arrive into the southeast later on this afternoon. Now further north, and that should stay mostly dry across Northern Ireland, much of Scotland. There's a risk of the odd shower across southeastern Scotland, but it's going to be a warmer day here. Temperatures climbing towards the low 20s, so a big difference from the weekend for northern areas. Meanwhile, across the south, it remains wet overnight tonight. Now, it should be a bright evening tonight across much of Scotland. Clear skies across western areas in particular. As I said, there is a risk of some quite heavy showers, possibly some thundery downpours across southeastern Scotland, but most areas should stay dry for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Now, this rain pushes up into northern England by the time we get into this evening, so there could be some water on the roads if you are travelling around across England and Wales through this evening. It does clear away to the north and east overnight tonight, but it will likely return through the night with further pulses of rain becoming a bit more focused across parts of Wales towards Lincolnshire as well, with the rain warning still in force through much of the night into Tuesday morning here. So there'll be a lot of cloud around overnight. Not too much of a breeze though, so under clearer skies it will be a little bit fresher, but most areas staying up in the mid-teens, so a fairly mild start. So if you do catch any sunshine first thing on Tuesday, it will feel quite warm, but for most of us it's going to be another cloudy and wet start to the day, particularly across parts of northeastern England where the rain will likely persist. Now, there's another risk of showers moving into southeastern areas of Scotland and a rain warning in force here, but again, temperatures a little bit higher and warmer tomorrow with highs of 21 degrees. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours. It's our biggest cash prize of the year so far, and you could be getting that winning call from us to tell you that you're our next Great British Giveaway winner.
Oh, I can't believe this.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh, you shocked me. I never won a penny in my life.
If I was there, I'd buy you a drink.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Ellie Costello, and thank you so much for joining us here on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Monday, the 15th of July. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Some breaking news on Jay Slater. We're hearing reports that human remains have been found in the area where the British teenager went missing. We'll have all of the latest after this.
Plus, we have an update following human remains being found in suitcases in Bristol. A 34-year-old man has been charged with 2 counts of murder over the deaths of 2 men. We'll be bringing you the latest from Wimbledon Magistrates Court.
And is the political temperature too high? Nigel Farage has said the rhetoric of the left is encouraging people to political violence. This as a defiant Trump arrives in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for the Republican National Convention.
So lots of breaking news today. We will be outside that magistrate's court for that case, the human remains found in those suitcases in Bristol. We're also going to be bringing you updates on the missing teenager, Jay Slater, the news that human remains have been found in Tenerife. All indications point to it being the missing teenager, Jay Slater. Please do get in touch, gbnews.com/your say.
Yeah, so we'll get to all of that after your headlines with Ray Addison.
Cheers, guys. Good afternoon. 1 minute past 2. And that breaking story we've been talking about. Human remains believed to be those of missing British teenager Jay Slater have been found in Tenerife. Spanish rescue teams made the discovery in the area where the 19-year-old went missing last month. His phone was last traced to the Masca ravine in a remote national park. His possessions and items of clothing are understood to have been found along with the body. In a statement, the civil guard said he may have died due to an accidental fall. However, an autopsy will be carried out to verify the cause of death. The King has written to Donald Trump following an assassination attempt in Pennsylvania on Saturday. The letter was delivered by the UK Embassy in Washington, D.C. Buckingham Palace has not disclosed details of that correspondence, but it is understood to have condemned the violence, expressed condolences for the victims, and wished the former president a quick recovery. Well, Donald Trump has arrived in Milwaukee ahead of the Republican National Convention, where he will be formally nominated as his party's presidential candidate. The former president pumped his fist in the air as he descended the stairs from his jet. Over the next few days, he'll reveal his vice presidential running mate and on Thursday make a keynote speech. Trump says the shooting has prompted him to focus on uniting the country. Meanwhile, President Biden has appealed to Americans to lower the political temperature. Speaking from the Oval Office, he called on everyone to take a step back. Biden has faced criticism for repeatedly claiming that Donald Trump poses a threat to democracy. Now he says it's time to cool it down. Here, the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Andrew Mitchell, told us it's made everyone think about politicians' safety.
President Biden put it very well from the Oval Office when he talked about the coarsening of debate and the fact that we need to have a very close look at how we conduct our politics. And I hope that on the back of the elections that we've just been through here, where candidates of all parties, particularly women, suffered the most appalling acts of abuse and were often put in very frightening positions. I hope very much that we can have a sort of national debate now about how we clean that up.
A man charged with murder after human remains were found in 2 suitcases in Bristol has been remanded in custody. Justin Andres Mosquera is accused of killing 62-year-old Albert Alfonso and 71-year-old Paul Longworth, who had previously been in a relationship. Police say he'd stayed with them at their flat in London's Shepherd's Bush, where more remains were found. The 34-year-old is due to appear at the Old Bailey on Wednesday. Police are scouring a farm in Hertfordshire for the remains of a woman who was murdered back in 1969. Muriel McKay was kidnapped and held for ransom when she was mistaken for the then wife of media mogul Rupert Murdoch. Brothers Arthur and Nizamuddin Hossain demanded £1 million. They were convicted of her kidnap and her murder, but her body has never been discovered. OK, the Prince and Princess of Wales have praised England's grit and determination in a personal message to Gareth Southgate and his squad. The England team has returned to the UK following a 2-1 defeat to Spain in the Euros final. Many fans say they're disappointed with Southgate's management style, but he's saying that now is not the time to decide his future. Southgate said that Spain did deserve that win.
Our players have been incredible. They've given everybody some incredible nights. They couldn't have given any more in terms of their effort, their desire, their character. Tonight we fell short. We didn't keep the ball well enough, but you know the players have pushed it till the 85th minute of the final game. They've been incredible, really.
Well, there's been a mixed reaction from England fans. These supporters in Newcastle spoke after the game.
A bit good, but I kind of expected it. Like, I tried to manifest that we would win, but under the management that we're currently in, I kind of knew this was going to happen. Do you know what I mean?
The way I think about it, Southgate didn't make subs earlier, but he made the right subs this time, but it just didn't come across. I reckon he'll retire this time. Different manager, different team, will come across better.
I think you should stay. You've done really well, mate. Right? Regardless of everything, you've done fantastic. Thank you very much, pal. Keep it up. I hope you stay.
Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 6 minutes past 2, and a body found in Tenerife thought to be Jay Slater is understood to have been found close to his mobile phone's last location and with his possessions and clothes. This according to missing persons charity LBT Global, who've been talking on behalf of the family.
Well, we're joined now by our reporter, Charlie Peters, who have been following this case. And, Charlie, what more do we know?
Well, it's 4 weeks today since Jay Slater started that treacherous journey from the northwest of the island on a reported 11-hour walk that he told his friends he was intending to take to the south of the island. He quickly went missing. The last phone call just before 9 a.m. on the 17th of June, and his phone running out of battery at 1% on that phone call, showing a location near the village of Masca, the northwest of the island. And that's the location where today, some 29 days after the Civil Guard on Tenerife launched their own specialist rescue operation, have found remains where all indications point to that belonging to Jay Slater. They say it's near the location where he went missing, that village of Masca. It's in the wide and rural and rugged and treacherous Rural de Teno National Park. This is the area where for 2 weeks those specialist mountain rescue and intervention group teams from the Civil Guard searched and researched the same perimeter location where they believed he might have gone missing. Now, while that went on, speculation was rife both online and on the island about alternative theories and other lines of inquiry. Those were left open by the Civil Guard, but it's now 2 weeks after they ended their on-the-ground search that body has been recovered. We're now waiting for an autopsy to confirm, despite all indications pointing we haven't got official confirmation. We have heard that the body was found in a steep and inaccessible part of the northwest of the island, pointing to a potential fall down a steep location where he could have become trapped and invisible to those search teams, which included sniffer dogs, drones and helicopters. And we have also heard from a charity close to the family that assisted with the search, saying that his possessions were found at this location. More information waiting to be updated later today.
This, of course, has been a really difficult time for the family and a very difficult time for the search team as well. Can you tell us a bit more about the terrain that they've had to be working with here?
Well, it's mountainous, and so many of the reporters on the ground have pointed to almost the sombre beauty of the area because it is so stunning, such as the range and the diversity of the terrain. It can go from those kind of narrow paths, not dissimilar to the one that Jay is thought to have taken when he left the Airbnb property on the morning of the 17th, to inaccessible and insurmountable terrain such as mountains, which really should be reserved for very experienced hikers and mountaineers. That's why when they launched their final day of that search operation 2 Saturdays ago, for that massive search, the Civil Guard called on only experienced hikers and mountaineers and those with specialist information and capabilities to join on with their group, because this is a seriously tough area to navigate, not only for those rescue teams, but also anyone who's seeking to hike in the area.
Thank you very much indeed, Charlie Peters, our reporter. Thank you for bringing us the latest. Now, joining us from Tenerife is the editor of Canarian Weekly, Chris Elkington. Chris, thank you very much for joining us. I know you've been following this story and all the updates. Devastating news today for the family that these human remains have been found. All indications pointing to it being the missing teenager, Jay Slater. Just tell us what it's been like covering this story. Chris, we've lost your sound for the moment. We'll come back to Chris because he's in Tenerife. But I believe we are actually going to now speak to Mark White, our Home and Security editor. This on a very different story. We've got an update on the case of human remains found in suitcases in Bristol. Mark, tell us the latest.
Yeah, this is 34-year-old Colombian national Justin Andres Mosquera, who appeared here at Wimbledon Magistrates Court on 2 counts of murder, of murdering 62-year-old Albert Alfonso and 71-year-old Paul Longworth. Now, Mr. Alfonso and Mr. Longworth were, we were told, in a relationship for a time, but still lived together in Scots Road in Shepherd's Bush in West London. It's also claimed by prosecutors that the defendant in this case, Mr. Mosquera, knew those 2 men and lodged with them for a time. He is accused of murdering the 2 men between the 8th and the 10th of July. Now, this case was sparked by the discovery of human remains after a man was seen dropping off 2 suitcases on the Clifton Suspension Bridge near Bristol late at night, last Wednesday night, when police arrived at the scene, alerted by bridge security. They looked inside the suitcases and found human remains. That was later confirmed to have been the remains of 2 men, indeed the 2 victims that we've just described. Mr. Mosquera stood in the dock. He was using a Spanish interpreter as he listened to the charges put against him. He spoke only to confirm his name, his date of birth, his age being 34, and that he had this address in West London. He has now been remanded back into custody. He'll appear again, this time at the Crown Court, the Central Criminal Court, on Wednesday of this week.
That this is a case that actually concerns victims from London rather than from Bristol. A lot of the speculation was looking at missing people in the West Country, but actually it's from the capital city and 2 men who seem to be in a relationship together.
Well, yes, indeed. The London connection came up a day or so after the initial remains were found in the 2 suitcases on the Clifton Suspension Bridge. Inquiries led the police back to London and to Shepherd's Bush. They spoke to a taxi driver in southeast London who it's believed had driven the suspect all the way out to Bristol. That taxi driver, not a suspect, but helping the police with their ongoing investigations. And then in the early hours of Saturday morning over the weekend, the arrest of Mr Mosquera in the Bristol area near Temple Meads railway station in Bristol, and he was charged then overnight last night, and this is his first court appearance here at Wimbledon Magistrates Court, and now of course, as I say, back in custody until that Crown Court hearing at the Old Bailey this coming Wednesday.
OK, well, thank you very much indeed. Mark White, our Home and Security editor there at Wimbledon Magistrates Court for us.
Well, we're going to return to our lead story now. Back to Tenerife, as Spanish police say a body located where Jay Slater went missing was found with the teenager's clothes and possessions. Joining us from Tenerife once more is the editor of Canarian Weekly, Chris Elkington. Chris, I apologise for the connection issues we experienced some minutes ago. How has it been for you covering this story?
It's been a very unusual one because right from the start, the media coverage was huge, but also the fact that the search started straight away is quite unusual. Normally it can take 48 hours before police will start actively looking for someone, but right from day one, this one has been extremely active and obviously covered globally, let alone just obviously in the UK and Tenerife. And along the way, there's obviously also been a huge amount of speculation on social media as well. So it's been a very intense time for all involved, especially the family.
Yes, the global attention on this story on Tenerife, this relatively small island, has been absolutely enormous. Of course, the news we're hearing today that these human remains have been found, all indications that it is the body of Jay Slater, who went missing a month ago. It's devastating news for the family. They've been speaking to the media about the abuse that's been online, the vicious conspiracy theories, and now to hear the worst news possible.
Yes, definitely. Hopefully they'll be able to lay some of those rumours to rest and get on with it, because right from the start, those of us who are based here, live here, know the terrain, know the area, know the police procedures, said all along that we believed that he was somewhere here on the island, and more than likely in one of the deep ravines, because the terrain, as you were talking about before, is extremely mountainous with ravines up to 2,000 feet deep. So it's not a massive surprise that eventually, what appears to be Jay has been found. It's also unusual for the police to release a statement like they have, saying they believe it is him, which tells us that, pending autopsy and official identification, that it is going to turn out to be. But hopefully it means that the family can get some closure on the whole situation.
It has been the most tragic story, but also perhaps compounded, or compounding that tragedy has been the web of conspiracy and amateur sleuthing that we've seen from people on social media sites, on Facebook groups. We've seen the most extraordinary amount of really quite distressing speculation.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why the police officially announced they were stopping this search 2 weeks ago, because they wanted to stop people joining them. They said, let us do our job. Let us continue looking for the person we're looking for, not looking after the people who want to come and help look for him. And, it's the whole investigation is being carried out under a secrecy order from the Arona courts in Los Cristianos, which is why there's been limited information over the last couple of weeks. And it's carried on in secrecy, effectively behind closed doors. And the search and mountain rescue crews that they use are in these areas all the time. They're in the mountains for various different things, whether it's, in this situation with someone going missing, or forest fires, or to, assist people who are injured from hiking, whatever situation. And they know what they're doing. So the whole amateur sleuth thing that's been going on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook has just been, a major distraction, really.
OK, well, thank you very much for your time. Chris Elkington, editor of Canarian Weekly. You're based in Tenerife. Thank you very much for speaking to us this afternoon.
Well, coming up, the Prince and Princess of Wales have written a personal letter to Gareth Southgate. It's as the team lands home after the Euros final. Much more on that after this.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we've got quite an extraordinary story to talk to you about now because a triple amputee war hero is launching a bid to become the first to sail across the Pacific Ocean non-stop, solo and unsupported.
Craig Wood was blown up as a teenager by the Taliban in Afghanistan, but now he's hoping to change the perception of disabled people and raise money for other limbless veterans like himself. And Craig joins us now. Morning.
So, Craig, you are extraordinary. You are planning to take up to 80 days to sail from La Paz in Mexico to Japan.
Yeah.
How many miles is that?
It'll be over 6,000.
Amazing.
Amazing. And it will take you how long?
The minimum it's going to take me is 60 days. It could be up to 80. Yeah.
And that's on your own. You've done plenty of this before, haven't you? You've done lots of solo sailing.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of solo sailing, but not as big as this. It is the world's biggest ocean, after all.
And why that particular route?
I wanted it to be a challenge, not just for me, but for anyone.
Right.
So any able-bodied person can look at this and go, wow, that is difficult.
Yeah.
And so that was the main drive. Then it's become a bigger thing than that now. I'm raising money for charity, and I can truly inspire people to change their perception on what is possible for disabled people.
And if you don't mind, can we ask you what happened in 2009 in Afghanistan? What were the circumstances of your injury?
I was on a normal routine foot patrol. About 5 metres in front of me, a commando IED was triggered. And subsequently, I became a triple amputee. Both legs above the knee, left hand at the wrist, facial injuries, etc., etc.
The People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 22 minutes past 2. Now, the Prince and Princess of Wales have praised England's football performance in a post shared alongside a photo of their two younger children, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, who can be seen here watching the football. They said, "England, your teamwork, grit and determination were an inspiration to all of us, young and old." Congratulations to Spain.
They just had to add that, didn't they? This all comes as the King and Queen Camilla arrive for a 2-day visit to the Channel Islands, heading to Jersey today, Guernsey tomorrow. And Cameron Walker is with us, our royal correspondent to tell all. Let's start, actually, with the Channel Islands. So what's on the cards here?
Yes, well, the King and Queen have now arrived in Jersey, in the capital, St Helier. Very sodden, very wet, I'm afraid. Umbrellas galore. Here we go. Channel Islands usually is a nice holiday destination because you're slightly more guaranteed sunshine, but it appears the King and Queen, unfortunately, have brought the bad weather with them. So it's a 2-day visit to the Channel Islands. It's their first visit. These photographs we're seeing here are in the Royal Square, and they're currently at a special sitting of the States Assembly. That's basically Jersey's government, because it's not part of the United Kingdom, it's a Crown dependency, and also a special sitting of the Royal Court as well. Now, Jersey and Guernsey Islanders are very lucky because they are getting a bank holiday today for Jersey, tomorrow for Guernsey, unlike the United Kingdom, who clearly hasn't got one for the England's team performance yesterday. But the King and Queen, of course, soldiering on, keeping calm, carrying on, but I feel a little bit sorry for these crowds who've obviously had to wait for hours in the rain to see their Majesties, but I don't think we'll let it dampen their spirits too much.
It was the same at Trooping the Colour, wasn't it? And people still get out there in their hordes, in their thousands, to catch a glimpse.
And at least they've remembered their brollies, unlike certain former prime ministers. But Cameron, of course, the football was a significant event for the royal family. The Prince of Wales and Prince George, they're in the stadium.
Yes, they absolutely were. It was a very special treat for Prince George. Prince William, of course, President of the FA, but we had a lovely photograph, as you referenced in your introduction, from the Princess of Wales of the two youngest children, what were their names, Louis and Charlotte. They were wearing the official England shirt. Charlotte, of course, is 9 years old. That's on the back of her shirt. Louis is 6. So they were watching it on television, we believe, in Adelaide Cottage with their mother, the Princess of Wales. And I'm sure they caught a glimpse of their father and brother on the television screens as well. Disappointing result. I'm sure the King of Spain went home from the Berlin Stadium a little bit more happy than William and George.
Yes, particularly after that Wimbledon win, too.
Yes.
But these statements, so this particular statement, the short one that I just read out, congratulating the team and also the Spanish team, who was that from?
That was from William and Catherine.
That was only from William and Catherine.
A personal tweet from them, yes, indeed. But we got a much more lengthy statement from His Majesty the King last night, following that England defeat, specifically to Gareth Southgate, actually, in the England team, expressing his commiserations and saying we're all still very proud of you.
Well, he did. He put out another statement before the match saying, "Save us the nail-biting finishes or the penalties." I'm wishing for that now.
Yes, the nation's collective blood pressure, I believe, was referenced following that semi-final goal in the last minute or so. But alas, it was not to be. But I'm sure the King still very much supports his team.
Yes, would have quite liked the chance for a penalty shootout. But alas.
Well, Cameron Walker, thank you very much for that royal roundup.
Yes, and now in other news, across the pond, President Biden has condemned the attempted assassination on Donald Trump, telling Americans that politics must never become a killing field, and he called on the temperature in politics to be lowered.
However, many Republicans are blaming the president's campaign rhetoric for the attack after the 81-year-old reportedly said it was time to put Trump in a bullseye.
Well, meanwhile, Donald Trump has made a plea for unity, calling on Americans not to let evil win. He's also confirmed he will attend the Republican National Convention on Thursday to accept his party's nomination for November's presidential election, where all eyes will be on who he picks to be his running mate.
Indeed, he arrived in Milwaukee earlier today. So let's speak to the Professor of International Politics, David Dunn, because, David, there's something quite defiant about Trump's statement, saying that initially he was going to delay his trip to the RNC, but actually is now going back to the original timetable because he doesn't want the assassin, the attempted assassin, the would-be assassin, to disrupt any of his previous plans.
Yes, indeed. It's very bullish of Trump to be doing this. Most people would have had at least 24 hours to contemplate the very near miss that he had. But he's keen to actually capitalise on this as politically as possible by turning up to the convention, by trying to strike a magnanimous tone and change the focus of his campaign. He recognises that this act and the images that came out of that unfortunate incident have buttressed his support considerably, and he is making sure that actually he is going to exploit that in terms of poll terms by taking a different approach at the convention. He recognises also that Biden is weakened by his debate performance, by the appalling gaffes in the press conference, and therefore he wants the focus to be on Biden's record rather than anything else here. He sees an opportunity politically, and he is clearly going to exploit it.
Are there any early indications that he has improved in terms of popularity, that he will get more popular support? Have there been any sort of snap polls or anything that we can point to say, other than the general commentary and assumption that he might get a boost from this?
Most of the commentaries are in terms of actually public reaction just through vox pops rather than polls, which tend to take a few more days and lag behind events. But actually, there's a record there. If you look back in 1981, when Ronald Reagan was shot, his popularity shot up to 70% soon thereafter. Similarly, Reagan was seen as handling the attempted assassination in a very robust way. Reagan famously said to his wife, "Nancy, I forgot to duck." And then just before he went under the knife to actually have an operation to remove the bullet, he said to the surgeons, "I hope you're all Republicans." And so, these things make a difference in terms of how you handle adversity. And clearly, Trump's defiant fist pump, his call to fight, his reluctance to leave the stage, and there are reports that he wanted to actually carry on with his speech. They indicate a robustness, and of course that will be contrasted with the rather frail images that we see of President Biden.
No, I absolutely love that Reagan anecdote where he turns to his surgeon and says, "I hope you're a Republican." I've read before that the chief surgeon, who I think was a registered Democrat, said, "Mr. President, today we're all Republicans." And I suppose that is sort of the rally round the flag effect that takes place when something like this happens. But there would be people who perhaps would just simply follow what their Secret Service told them to do, duck out of the way, be bundled into the car quickly. Donald Trump, of course, not doing that, resisting the Secret Service to some extent with his raised fist. It shows, I suppose, quite a bit of his personality there.
It does, but it's important to note, of course, that he did duck. Donald did duck on this occasion, as the memes are suggesting, and actually shows the importance of actually following training, because we know that assassins, it's not usually the first bullet that kills you. That was true of John Kennedy. It's true of many others, and Trump followed the training and hitting the floor once he realised that he was under fire, and that, of course, is exactly the right thing to do. Only once the situation was clear and the Secret Service had eliminated the threat, was he able to then get to his feet and leave the stage.
Now, David, just lastly, Nigel Farage, who's experienced his own political violence, I suppose, on a much milder scale, I should say, has claimed that some of the rhetoric coming from left-wingers, coming from the Democrats, has increased the threat of political violence, or that might have something to do with the threat to Donald Trump. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, actually, it's quite an interesting and complicated situation here, because there's been commentary on both sides. A lot of Republican congressmen have actually tweeted that same line as Nigel Farage. Other commenters are pointing to the fact that actually that Donald Trump hasn't condemned violence. He talks about the people who are locked up for the January 6th storming of the Capitol as great patriots. He refers to them as hostages rather than actually people who've engaged in political violence. And they point to those things as an indication that actually Trump himself has contributed to that febrile atmosphere which doesn't condemn violence, and of course the whole idea of contesting the democratic process, the peaceful and lawful way in which democracies change power. He has contested that at every point, and that is seen as actually contributing to a situation whereby people don't feel that they can express themselves through the democratic process, and as a consequence, in some ways, fuels that sense of the threat of violence.
Although, of course, no indications yet at this stage that this was a politically motivated assassination. It seems that the person concerned, the suspect, wasn't particularly politically active. At least that's from initial reports. But David Dunn, Professor of International Politics, really appreciate your expertise on this issue. Thanks for joining us.
Coming up, the latest on the breaking news that human remains have been found where Jay Slater went missing. Spanish police say all indications are the body is that of the British teenager. That after your headlines with Ray.
Thanks, guys. 33 minutes past 2, our top stories. Human remains believed to be those of missing British teenager Jay Slater have been found in Tenerife. Spanish rescue teams made the discovery in the area where the 19-year-old went missing last month. His phone was last traced to the Masca ravine in a remote national park. His possessions and items of clothing are understood to have been found with the body. In a statement, the civil guard said he may have died due to an accidental fall. However, an autopsy will be carried out to verify the cause of death. The King has written to Donald Trump following the assassination attempt in Pennsylvania on Saturday. Buckingham Palace is not disclosing details of the correspondence, but it's understood to have condemned the violence, expressed condolences for the victims, and wished the former president a quick recovery. Donald Trump has arrived in Milwaukee ahead of the Republican National Convention there, where he'll be formally nominated as his party's presidential candidate. Over the next few days, he'll reveal his vice presidential running mate and make a keynote speech. Trump says the shooting has prompted him to focus on uniting the country. President Biden has appealed to Americans to lower the political temperature following that assassination attempt. Speaking from the Oval Office, he called on everyone to take a step back. Of course, Biden has faced criticism for repeatedly claiming that Donald Trump poses a threat to democracy. A man charged with murder after human remains were found in 2 suitcases in Bristol has been remanded in custody. Justin Andres Mosquera is accused of killing 62-year-old Albert Alfonso and 71-year-old Paul Longworth. Police say he'd stayed with them at their flat in London, where more remains were found. The 34-year-old is due to appear at the Old Bailey on Wednesday. And the England squad has arrived at London's Stansted Airport as they return home following their 2-1 Euros final loss to Spain. Prince and Princess of Wales have praised their grit and determination in a personal message to Gareth Southgate. However, many fans say they're disappointed with Southgate's management style. Right, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
OK, let's look at the markets. The pound will buy you $1.2987 and €1.1905. Price of gold, £1,857 and 7 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 set 8,242 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. A very wet day to come for much of England and Wales with weather warnings in force. Warmer further north, though, than it has been lately. That's because we're between weather systems for northern areas, but to the south, we've got low pressure approaching and these weather fronts moving into the south coast. And that's where the heaviest rain will be around lunchtime. We've got a band of pulses of heavy rain pushing in through southwest England and into Wales. They'll also arrive into the southeast later on this afternoon. Now further north, and that should stay mostly dry across Northern Ireland, much of Scotland. There's a risk of the odd shower across southeastern Scotland, but it's going to be a warmer day here. Temperatures climbing towards the low 20s, so a big difference from the weekend for northern areas. Meanwhile, across the south, it remains wet overnight tonight. Now, it should be a bright evening tonight across much of Scotland. Clear skies across western areas in particular. As I said, there is a risk of some quite heavy showers, possibly some thundery downpours across southeastern Scotland, but most areas should stay dry for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Now, this rain pushes up into northern England by the time we get into this evening, so there could be some water on the roads if you are travelling around across England and Wales through this evening. It does clear away to the north and east overnight tonight, but it will likely return through the night with further pulses of rain becoming a bit more focused across parts of Wales towards Lincolnshire as well, with the rain warning still in force through much of the night into Tuesday morning here. So there'll be a lot of cloud around overnight. Not too much of a breeze though, so under clearer skies it will be a little bit fresher, but most areas staying up in the mid-teens, so a fairly mild start. So if you do catch any sunshine first thing on Tuesday, it will feel quite warm, but for most of us it's going to be another cloudy and wet start to the day, particularly across parts of northeastern England, where the rain will likely persist. Now, there's another risk of showers moving into southeastern areas of Scotland and a rain warning in force here. But again, temperatures a little bit higher and warmer tomorrow with highs of 21 degrees. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon to you. I'm Jules Buckley. South Lanarkshire, the southbound M74 struggling. Junction 10, Lesmahago, down towards Junction 11. It's part blocked and queuing back to Blackwood at Junction 9. It's a 4-car collision there causing those delays. Big queue still in Somerset on the northbound M5 around Bridgewater. Now, Junction 23 to 22, still a lane closure in place. An earlier lorry fire still being recovered. The queue is prior to Junction 24 at Bridgewater South. You're heading towards that neck of the woods. The westbound M4 struggling, all the traffic being held from 17 Chippenham to Bath at 18, so traffic at a stand. There's a vehicle fire, smoke blowing across the road. Also westbound, a lane shut and the exit slip to come off at Slough at 6. There's a breakdown. A long queues clockwise on the M25 away from Wisley at 10, all due to a collision that's now on the hard shoulder.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Right, it's 2:39. Good afternoon, Britain. And guess what? It is Martin Dobley up next, and he's joining us now. Martin, nice to see you. What's coming up on the show this afternoon?
Well, now we've all mopped away our tears over the Three Lions defeat. It's back to business as usual. I should be dead, said Donald Trump. It's a miracle I'm here. He's just landed in Milwaukee. Tonight he'll speak at a Republican convention. GB News will be there. Thousands and thousands expected to turn out to support and to protest Donald Trump. An extraordinary tale of survival. What would that mean for American politics? Plus, of course, Ben Habib in the studio at 4 p.m. Is there a revolt within the Reform Party? Ben Habib was dramatically fired by Nigel Farage. Now he's saying there's a democratic deficit at the heart of the party. It cannot be a one-man band. He says reform needs reform. We'll have a frank and open conversation in the studio. Plus, Dan Thomas, the England fan who was so confident the Three Lions would triumph, he got Euro 2024 Championship winners, England, tattooed massively on his side. He says he's got no regrets. We're joined by him and his tattooist. His tattooist has said he won't even take the tattoo off for a year as punishment for his stupidity. It's a fantastic tale. I can't wait to tell. Light and shade, all of that between 3 and 6.
Sounds fantastic, Martin. You've got to get that tattooist to bring along his tattoo gun and just insert in very small letters the word moral. Moral winners. And he can sort of get away with it that way.
I mean, is it fair to call him a bit of a plank? I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's a nice guy. I look forward to hearing what he has to say. Thank you so much, Martin. Looking forward to the show. Good stuff, as always. There you go. You won't want to miss that one.
No, well, Martin mentioned it. The Republican National Convention. Trump has landed in Milwaukee. We're going to have a look inside the convention. That's what we can see on the left of our screen and, indeed, on the right of our screen. This is, of course, the convention that happens once every 4 years, a nominating convention to formally select the candidate. Of course, Trump is the presumptive nominee of the Republican Party. In ages past, this would be an actual contested vote that would take place in this convention. These days, it's simply ceremonial.
And it's certainly going to be the place to be, even more so than it would have been for those. How many people go to these things? Probably thousands. Attendees. Of course, all the media will be there to see how Donald Trump speaks after what happened to him the other day. It'll be absolutely fascinating to watch. So I'm glad we're there. GB News will be there bringing you it.
Rather reminiscent of 1984. When Margaret Thatcher, of course, suffered the Brighton bomb at the Conservative Party conference. The next morning, she got up to the stage and made her speech in the way that she would have done in any way, saying this attempt to destroy democracy by violence will fail, and all attempts to destroy democracy by terrorism will fail.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see what his message here. We're now going to jump you to the shooter's house. So this is where he was living, a humble abode, I would say, and that's the live shot there of the home of the shooter, the would-be assassin, the failed assassin, who has since been annihilated there in Pennsylvania. For you, the live shot of the shooter's house.
Thomas Matthew Crooks. He was only in his early 20s. He had recently graduated from high school just in 2022. Some initial reporting has suggested he was rather an outcast at school, suffered bullying at school, and perhaps that has all fed through to this tragedy, really. Of course, not just the shooter was killed at the event, but also an audience member, a local fireman.
Yes, we've heard from local media and the like, lots of stories about his childhood, how he was at school, clearly a bit of an outsider, massively bullied, that's what people have said, and that he'd been not allowed or banned or been kicked out of his rifle squad at school. So perhaps a bit of a, for want of a better word, a bit of an outsider, a bit of a loser at school, but we'll find out more about him and his background, I'm sure, in the days to come.
Well, let's get the very latest now with our political editor, Christopher Hope, who joins us now. Because, Christopher, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has spoken to Donald Trump.
That's right. The PM did speak to Donald Trump yesterday, 5 or 10 minutes, to express his concern and upset across the board, across the political landscape about the attempted assassination on Donald Trump late on Saturday, UK time. It has prompted the Home Office to go and speak to candidates, MPs, anyone who felt intimidated and threatened during the election campaign, to see how we can try and dial down the rhetoric in this country. There's not the same issue with guns, of course, but the fact that this can happen, that people can go violent from what should be a heated debate, a discourse, is clearly utterly wrong. And Number 10 are keen to show us that they are on the front foot to a degree. There has been Lord Walmsley. He's the extremism czar in terms of democracy, and he's concerned about what the government might do next. I think in the wash-up for the election campaign, we are seeing an attempt to get to grips with this, and we do know also, Tom and Emily, that this conversation happened between the Prime Minister and Mr Trump on the tarmac at Berlin Airport, because the PM, of course, flew yesterday to the football to watch it. He flew by, it seems like a government plane, the same plane that took me and reporters and lots of other officials and ministers to and from NATO and Washington. Also flew the Prime Minister, it seems, to Berlin for the football final. And there's some criticism already online about why he's taking a private jet, a jet that went there. I've got Number 10 just for you, Tom, to ask who's paying for it and what's the justification. I think they might well say that when he got there, he did speak to Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, and Pedro Sanchez, who's the Spanish Prime Minister, when he got to the ground. So they might feel there was some government work done. But of course, you and me and Emily, we all remember the pressure that Labour put on Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister over the use of private jets.
Yes, it's interesting because, I mean, they're government planes for government business, but in opposition, Keir Starmer called these private jets as if they were sort of doing private business. Interestingly, too, that the Defence Secretary, John Healey, and Keir Starmer took two separate, different government planes to fly at the same time to the same event in Washington, D.C., the NATO summit. It does seem that it was one rule for Rishi Sunak in government and a completely different rule for Keir Starmer as far as Keir Starmer's concerned.
Ed Miliband won't be happy.
Well, just to clarify, the issue on John Healey and Keir Starmer is that John Healey went a day early and he was there for the opening of the NATO summit, whereas the Prime Minister joined midway through or after it started. So I think that's why Healey went separately to Keir Starmer, not on the flight with the rest of the press pack and all of the officials. Yeah, but no question, during the election campaign, before that, really all of the time that Mr Sunak was Prime Minister, there was pressure from Labour about why you're flying around the country. I think politically it fed into the idea that he's a very wealthy man who isn't travelling by train like everybody else might do so. Number 10, of course, said then that it was the most efficient use of his time, and it'll be interesting to find out if that's the justification this time from Number 10.
And we know after
Sir Keir Starmer.
Oh, sorry. We know after the King's speech that Nigel Farage is planning to head off to the Republican National Convention to see Trump, his friend. I imagine they'll probably be thinking a lot about security.
Well, they will be, and what I find fascinating about this visit to Milwaukee later this week by Nigel Farage, of course, the MP for Clacton and also a GB News TV presenter, is he is forging his own special relationship with Donald Trump, which by its nature will be deeper than the personal one between Sir Keir Starmer, David Lammy and Donald Trump. And whether he brings back any messages to the Prime Minister, whether he can use interventions in the House of Commons to tell us what Donald Trump really thinks, rather than what we think he thinks due to the Washington DC London connection. I think that's fascinating, and we'll look forward to see more of what Nigel Farage had to say about that.
Yes, it will be very interesting. Thank you, Christopher Hope, our political editor there in Westminster for us. And we're going to end on some... Well, I should say it's some concerning showbiz news. This is all relating to the Strictly Come Dancing dancer, Graziano Di Prima. He's been dropped from the show over allegations of gross misconduct, which he says he deeply regrets.
Well, it's been reported that the departure is due to unspecified allegations by those who observed his rehearsals with TV star Zara McDermott last year. It's the latest in a string of scandals for the show.
Yes, joining us now is entertainment reporter Hayley Palmer. Hayley, thank you very much indeed. There's a bit of a cloud over this BBC show.
There really is. I mean, it's meant to be a light entertainment Saturday night show, which we all live for. Well, I personally do. I think it's very, very sad indeed. I mean, look, I've been a dancer my whole life. I've run a dance school, a theatre school. I know all about the industry. For me personally, I grew up in very strict dance lessons where we'd have a ballet teacher that would be extremely brutal. I mean, at times we were pushed down into splits. We, ouch. I know, can't do that now unless I've had a Prosecco, but... but for me, I've grown up in that kind of strict dance regime. So I feel like if I was to go on Strictly, that's what I would expect. Now, I think what's happened here, what I can see is they've got West End stars that will go on the show, professionals, as contestants. And then you've got people that haven't had any dance experience, like Zara, for example. She looked beautiful. She was technically not a dancer. And I think she probably did struggle. And Graziano probably, really did give her a hard time. Now, listen, I don't know what happened behind the scenes. I haven't seen the video. All I can say is that I think they probably are expecting too much of them.
So you think this is a cultural clash, actually?
Well, yes, I do, because if you look at Giovanni and Graziano, they're both Italian. Maybe they've got different methods than the English do. Obviously, it's no excuse, because, like I said, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And I think what's going to happen now for the future of Strictly, you're going to need chaperones and you're going to need video surveillance at all times.
Goodness me.
We can't really have fun anymore, can we?
No, we can't. And it is such a shame, because I just think when Strictly started, it was brilliant fun to see people that couldn't dance. You're like Anne Widdecombe. People, it was great. We were all behind them. We were like, this is fantastic. And now, from what I'm hearing behind the scenes, you're just like, it's gone too far. Do I think Strictly has a future? I'm sorry to say it. I don't think it does. If one more person steps forward, how can they continue?
Really? You think this is existential?
I do, yeah, because you've had two professionals get sacked. I mean...
Yeah, it doesn't look good, does it? And what do you think about the way the BBC is handling this?
Well, obviously they have a procedure, but for me personally, I've looked back at the footage, and at the time, when they do the show and they go, oh, this is your partner, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so happy. And then they do all these interviews, oh my God, he's my best friend, he's like...
They're always cuddling, aren't they?
Yeah.
They look like romantic partners.
How much of that is real, and how much of that is for the cameras?
Well, I think you can't say, actually, I hate him, but, but maybe you need to, because I think the public would have preferred if something had come out after the show or when the show was happening. To wait a year later, I think that's why we're kind of like, oh, but I know they're saying production actually came forward with the Zara case, not Zara. I don't know. I think it's a bit late now.
It is a bit, because Zara's been pictured with him all smiles since all of this.
Yeah, she went to his tour.
Yeah, but it is a bit of a... It is a reality TV show. in a way. And it seems as though every single reality show has been tainted by something like this. So even if you go to things like, I don't know, Geordie Shore, Love Island, their mental health hasn't been taken into account enough, people have misbehaved, there's been sexism, there's been misogyny, there's been blah, 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 blah. This is just human interactions now. I mean, in case this dancer has done something terrible and we don't know exactly what he's accused of and all of this, so I don't want to speak too soon, but it is just how humans, there are things that are going to go wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right. If you look at Big Brother, you know, in the early days, it was hilarious. We'd watch it and just crack up with people having, you know, serious, crazy outbursts. But now it's like they'd be called straight away into the diary room. No, that's not OK. Mental health check, you know. So I think there needs to be procedures in place because it's now turned very toxic.
And yet you look at shows like The X Factor, which of course used to be great fun, mainly because they perhaps were quite cruel to people in auditions. That doesn't happen anymore.
No, it doesn't. That wouldn't be allowed to happen anymore. But for me personally, you know, you want to see a bit of real life, and you want to see that. I think it's a shame it's got to this. And you know, there's going to be other shows, Dancing on Ice, things like that. People are going to step forward. I mean,
have we all gone a bit soft?
Oh, well, that is the question. That is the question, and I don't think there is a clear answer to it because you can see very strong arguments on either side.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Giovanni and Graziano, they're top of their game. They really are. They're athletes, and like I say, is there going to be?
Maybe he wasn't taking any you know, back talk or whatever. Thank you very much, Hayley Farmer. Great to speak to you, entertainment reporter. Of course, that's all from us today.
Yes, but join us again at noon tomorrow, and of course, up next, it's the inimitable Martin Daubney.
And a tattooed man.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Through the rest of the day, there are weather warnings in force for heavy rain across much of England and Wales. Further north, though, it is that much drier, particularly compared to the weekend. It's feeling a bit warmer as well. And it will stay dry through much of the night. We're between weather systems here. However, to the south, this weather front pushing up to the north and east will bring heavy pulses of rain throughout this evening and overnight. So there could be some surface water and potentially some localised flooding by Tuesday morning, particularly where the rain remains heavy across central areas of England and Wales. Where there's a lot of cloud around, it will be a mild night tonight. However, in the far northwest, skies stay a little bit clearer. It will be a slightly brighter and cooler start to Tuesday here, but plenty of cloud around for most of us to start Tuesday. Even across the Northern Isles, some showers affecting here, but across western areas of Scotland, it will be dry and bright. However, to the east, we'll see some heavy showers breaking out quite early on Tuesday morning. Dry for Northern Ireland and much of northern England or southern Scotland. The northeast of England, though, and much of Wales still got that weather warning in force first thing tomorrow, so still a risk of some localised flooding if you're travelling first thing on Tuesday. And then the focus becomes a bit more centred to eastern areas of Scotland, around the central belt, and some northeastern areas of England where there's a risk of some very heavy downpours lasting into Tuesday evening. From the west, though, it is turning a much drier and brighter through the course